Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Public Safety, Transportation, and the Environment. It is February 19th, and we are going to get started. We are going to start with the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy and introduce Madeline Miller, our analyst, who will walk us through the analysis. Thanks.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Madeline Miller. Today I'll be presenting the DLS budget analysis of the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. GOCPP, or GOCAP, is a coordinating office that advises the governor on criminal justice strategies and serves as the state's criminal justice grants administering agency. It plans, promotes, and funds efforts with its partners to advance public policy, enhance public safety, reduce crime and juvenile delinquency, and serve victims. Between fiscal 26 and 27, its budget grows under 1% to $347.7 million. I'll begin with a discussion of its managing for results data on page 4. The first MFR topic is the agency's role as a grants administrator. As shown in Exhibit 1 on page 5, most of the grant funding that GOCPP awards each year is to law enforcement and criminal justice agencies for crime prevention programs and to victim services providers. In fiscal 25, approximately 53% of the funds awarded were for crime prevention purposes and 34% were for victim services providers. The over $285 million spent on grants in fiscal 25 went to approximately 1,030 subgrants. As shown in Exhibit 2 on page 6, there was a slight decrease in the number of grants between fiscal 24 and 25 and an increase in the number of grant monitor positions within the agency, and those led to a reduction in staff workloads in fiscal 25. That ratio of 73 to 1 is much lower than the previous average of 115 to 1, and it's expected to remain at a lower level in fiscal 26. One of the ways that GOCPP modified its MFR between this current submission and last year's is to stop reporting the average time between application due dates and notification of awards, and to instead report the percentage of grants where the award notification was issued prior to the award start date. In fiscal 25, this occurred for about 15% of grants. In its testimony, written or oral, GOCPP should comment on whether it has a target for the percentage of award notifications issued prior to the award start date for fiscal 26 and future years. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows that in both fiscal 24 and 25, 594 unique organizations applied to the agency for funding. Though there were fewer first-time recipients of funding in fiscal 25 than in the previous year, the amount was still higher than the 2021 to 2023 levels. GOCPP also reports measures related to the oversight of grants that it awards. A similar percentage of grants were in a regular status between the two most recent years. Another substituted MFR measure is shown in Exhibit 4 on page 8. The agency now reports the percentage of total awards expended at grant closeout instead of the percentage of unused state and federal funds returned each fiscal year. Though there's only 3 years of data available to compare, the percent of awarded funds expended increased 18 percentage points between fiscal 23 and 25. Now turning to page 9, GOCPP provides direct services through its Victim Services Unit. Compensation paid to individuals is provided through the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. Exhibit 5 details CICB claims that were paid in fiscal 24 and 25. Comparable data from annual reports is also shown. There are differences in these two data sources, largely due to the point in time information is extracted from the agency's database. Using the annual report figures, the number of claims resulting in awards increased by over 87%. The value of claims paid also increased about 32%. This increase in claims paid is in advance of the effects of Chapter 705 of 2024, most of which became effective on July 1, 2025. That chapter is anticipated to significantly increase the volume of claims that CICB receives, in part due to the expansion of eligible crimes and types of expenses. Additionally, maximum award limits also increase. GOCPP should comment on CICB's workload since the start of fiscal 26 in comparison to recent fiscal years, including for emergency claims. Also within the VSU is the Sexual Assault Reimbursement Unit, which pays claims to medical providers. On page 11, Exhibit 6 shows that in fiscal 25, SARU received 4,110 claims and processed 5,300. That difference is because the unit operated with a backlog for several years. Since fiscal 21, the average claim amount rose by about 29%. For both CICB and SARU, GOCPP discontinued several MFR measures between the two most recent submissions, as shown in Exhibit 7 on page 12. In its testimony, GOCPP should discuss why it discontinued those measures that had been newly reported last year. In addition to altering reporting requirements for CICB, Chapter 705 reduced the amount of time that the board has after the receipt of a claim and all necessary supporting material to complete review and file a written report with the executive director of GOCPP. This time period was reduced from 90 days to 30. In fiscal 2025, there was an average of 56 days between the date of receiving an application and the date of resolution. Though the statute does not require the percentage of claims processed within 30 days to be reported, submitting this data would demonstrate whether the agency is achieving standards set in statute. The third area of performance analysis relates to sexual assault evidence test kit testing. GOCPP uses state funds and, when available, federal funds to increase the number of kits tested in Maryland. Exhibit 8 on page 13 provides the number of kits tested through the National Sexual Assault Kit Initiative and the Sexual Assault Kit Testing Programs. Established by Chapters 704 and 705 of 2023 and administered by GOCPP, the Sexual Assault Evidence Collection Kit Reporting Program tracks the location, status, and chain of custody of sexual assault evidence collection kits. A local law enforcement agency or person that had control or possession of a sexual assault evidence collection kit must report location, status, and chain of custody information to the reporting program by the end of March of this year. The agency uses a database referred to as TrackIt to support the program, and as of fiscal 25, 1,525 kits were entered. As of February 24 of this year, the number of kits was approximately 5,200, and the agency reports that roughly 20,000 will be logged by the deadline. A discussion of the fiscal 26 budget appears on page 15. A total of $1.3 million was added via legislative priority spending, and funding for these purposes is not continued in the allowance. The allowance also includes 8 proposed deficiencies that add $1.8 million. Those related to personnel and statewide vacancies at approximately $337,000. I'll also highlight that $1 million is added to support SARU, and for approximately $408,000 is added for CICB claims. Moving now to the allowance, a pie chart on page 16 shows how funding will be used across GOCPP's programs. Though the allowance is $347.7 million, the agency has several special fund accounts that are supported through general funds. For these accounts, the budget includes a general fund contribution and planned expenditure from the account. This allows the agency to retain any funds which may have gone unspent or returned to the agency by a grantee to use for the same purpose in a future fiscal year. If the double count is excluded, the agency's total spending power is $315.5 million. Approximately 60% of the allowance is appropriated for various local law enforcement grants. And between the current year and the allowance, the agency's budget has a net increase of $2.2 million, as shown in Exhibit 10 on pages 18 and 19. One of the areas in the allowance where there is a double count is the Performance Incentive Grant Fund. A formula sets the level of general funds GOCPP receives each fiscal year, and unspent or returned funds are retained in an associated special fund account. This special fund currently has a balance, and a provision in this year's BRFA would authorize the transfer of $2 million from that account's balance to the general fund. With this transfer, the agency projects that the balance will be $2.9 million at the close of fiscal 26. Returning now to areas of change in the allowance, most changes are driven by grant programming. As shown in Exhibit 11 on page 20, the state aid for police protection formula and enhancement amounts both increase. The formula grows by $1.1 million to $77 million, and the enhancement amount, which is unmandated, increases from $45.9 million to $47.1 million, with that difference being additional funds for Baltimore City. Between fiscal 23 and 26, the agency received an additional $45.9 million to use as a SAP enhancement, and it awarded the funds so that jurisdictions received a proportional amount based on violent crime rates from the most recently available crime data. Though the fiscal 27 budget again includes that enhancement and additional funding, the most recently available crime data was not used. A comparison between the allowance and what it would look like with the 2024 calendar data can be found in the Overview of State Aid to Local Governments report. Committee narrative in the 2025 Joint Chairman's Report requested that the agency report information on the SAP enhancement and whether any jurisdiction used that funding differently than the SAP formula funds. Enhancement funds are used in the same manner, and recipients of the funding absorbed it into their overall budgets. Therefore, more detailed expenditure information is not available on either portion. The enhancement funding remains unmandated in fiscal 27, and in light of the state's fiscal condition, DLS recommends deleting the $47.1 million general fund appropriation. Another grant programming change I'll highlight is the new grant included for the Group Violence Reduction Strategy, or GVRS. GOCPP would use $2.5 million in general funds to provide a grant to the Baltimore City's Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The GVRS is a partnership between the Mayor's Office, the Baltimore City Police Department, and the Baltimore State's Attorney's Office, who work with ROCA and youth advocate programs, as well as community members to provide focused deterrence services. Many of these partners receive state support through GOCPP and the Department of Juvenile Services, though not specifically for this strategy. DLS recommends deleting the $2.5 million for the GVRS grant. Personnel data is shown on page 24. Only 7 positions are vacant at the end of calendar 25 compared with 14 at the end of calendar 24. Spending on regular personnel increases by approximately $1.1 million between fiscal 26 and the allowance, and spending on contractual personnel decreases by approximately $182,000 due to the conversion of 2.8 contractual positions to regular positions. There are 2 issues to discuss, beginning on page 25. The first relates to the publication of the state's newest 3-year crime plan for 2025 to 2027. That plan describes 7 focus areas for the agency as described in Exhibit 12. For each of these focus areas, the plan details how the agency will use its existing partnerships and programs to address specific goals over the next 3 years. While most measures are not numeric in nature and therefore would not be easy to report through the MFR process, some are countable. And additionally, one of the focus areas also relates to measuring crime and its prevention. That's the Quantifiable Safety Indicator Scorecard. The agency is required to create this scorecard by Chapter 350, and the agency anticipates its publication by the end of the current fiscal year. Through this scorecard, the agency will also develop indicators of safety and fairness in the criminal justice system and indicators of the underlying factors and conditions affecting progress towards a safer state. Presently, through its MFR, the agency only reports 1 crime outcome measure, and that's shown in Exhibit 13 on page 27, and that's the number of criminal organizations disrupted and dismantled through MSIN's support. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting the agency create additional outcome measures related to public safety or crime prevention for the fiscal 28 submission. The second issue begins on page 28. GOCPP's allowance includes $50.6 million in federal fund spending. A good portion of that comes from the Department of Justice's Office for Victims of Crime, through which the agency receives a federal VOCA assistance and a federal VOCA compensation fund. Assistance dollars support the victim services providers, in the VOCA program is how we refer to it, and the compensation dollars support Maryland's Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. As shown in Exhibit 14, the federal fiscal 25 VOCA assistance award is approximately $23.1 million. That amount is about $8.4 million lower than the 10-year average, but $8.9 million more than was received in the previous federal fiscal year. Due to the new award and there being balance funds available from previous years, the agency has about $25 million in federal funds to use for the $60 million level established for victim services providers by Chapters 625 and 626 of 2023. As federal funding levels continue to fluctuate and the grant program remains of great importance to the state, DLS recommends adding budget language restricting $100,000 pending the submission of an annual report. Moving now to the federal compensation funds, they represent a much smaller source of federal revenue to the state, but it's easier to predict that funding level due to its formula as shown in Exhibit 15 on page 29. As discussed in last year's analysis, the agency failed to utilize the 2019 federal award, contributing to a lower certified payout in federal fiscal 2023 than in the previous year. Accordingly, the state only received a new award of $296,000 in federal fiscal 25. As shown in Exhibit 16 on page 30, the agency has spent all of the other federal funds that was available to it, so only that $296,000 amount is available to it in the current fiscal year. Despite this, the governor's budget books show the working appropriation as including $3.3 million in federal funds. And so to align the working appropriation with anticipated spending, DLS recommends the fiscal 26 federal fund authorization be reduced by $3 million. In addition to federal funds, CICP claims are paid with revenues from the judiciary, investment earnings, and restitution paid by a defendant to the fund for reimbursement of money already paid by the fund to a victim. Between these sources, there's approximately $3.3 million for the agency to use for claims in fiscal 26. Though only $2.7 million was awarded in the previous year, additional awards and higher award amounts may be paid in the current year. Finally, DLS recommends that $100,000 in general funds be withheld pending the agency's submission of the fiscal 26 annual CICB report, and that certain additional information be included. Detail on all DLS recommended actions can be found on pages 32 through 35. An update appears on page 36, and appendices are on pages 37 and 45. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Any questions? I have one question. Has DLS in prior years recommended deleting the supplemental police grant
Yes.
program? And
Each
is this
year that
the
it's been
third year?
provided.
Each year it's been
I believe this is the fourth.
okay. Other Senator Roosevelt?
Yeah, actually, that reminded me of a question I wanted to ask. So for the past several years, the governor has, and we passed more than is in the mandated formula? Is that,
Yes, by
that's the
about
issue?
$45.9 million.
That's, I just want to understand, so there is a minimum.
Yes,
and
that's the
we've gone
formula
over.
amount.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dorothy Lennig, Executive Director, you may. Thank you. And please introduce who is accompanying you. Do you want to sit in the middle?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dorothy Lennig. I'm the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, otherwise known as GOCAP. Thank you for the opportunity to be before the subcommittee today as you review the proposed operating budget for GOCAP for fiscal year 2027. We want to thank our assigned DLS analyst, Madeline Miller, for her thoughtful and thorough analysis. I'd like to start by introducing the panel with me today. Sylvia Senkis is our CFO, and Quentin Jones is the Criminal Justice Grants Division Director. I'm grateful to our management team who are all committed to rebuilding GOCAP and serving as the coordinating office that advises the governor on criminal justice strategies. A significant part of GOCAP's work is making grant awards to law enforcement agencies, victim service organizations, and organizations serving justice-involved youth. We're committed to awarding these funds fairly, equitably, and in accordance with the governor's public safety priorities. And I really want to make the committee aware, we have on our website, we have an interactive map that's set up by county, and every grant that GOCAP makes is listed on there. So if you clicked on, Baltimore City, you can see all the grants that go to the city, what the fund is, what agency they go to, what it says the agency's doing with it, and who to contact if you want to get services or find out what they're doing. We submitted our written response to DLS's report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see any mention of victim services in your report. I'm specifically concerned about rape kits and the accountability, the reporting, the analysis, something I worked on, the chairs worked on. Could you speak to your budget allocations and programs relative to victim services?
A lot of the victim services money we allocate through VOCA, the Victims of Crime Act. That's $60 million that goes out on a competitive basis. The NOFA for that is out right now. So organizations that serve victims of crime, and so it has to be for the service as a result of that victimization. So a victim of domestic violence wants to get a protective order, that would be a victim of crime that would be eligible under VOCA. So that's a big category of who we serve. We also, in our unit, we serve victims through the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board that reimburses victims of crime for unreimbursed expenses in certain situations. We don't pay for everything, but it's by statute what we pay. And we pay from GOCAP the sexual assault reimbursement unit. So somebody gets raped, they go to a hospital, they have the test, and we pay for that. We also are involved in the sexual assault the tracking system for the kits. And right now they have a deadline of March 31st to identify where all the outstanding kits are. They're all going into a database. We don't have enough data in there yet to make the data really public because it's going in kind of slowly, but we have put together a dashboard that will become more available.
Thank you for that information.
Actually, but I want to follow up on just on one question there, which is, when do you think that would be made public? When do you think you'll have that? You said March, but.
Well, by statute, by March 31st, all the kits have to be in. I can't guarantee you they're all going to be in because we're depending on the agencies that are holding the kits to get them to us. And they have to enter them into a spreadsheet that's provided by the company that sets up Track It. And apparently they're not all coming in exactly as they're supposed to. So some of them have been sent back to agencies to say, you have to enter the data correctly. So I can't guarantee every kit's going to be in by March 31st, but that's what the statute says, and that's what we're hoping for.
And so do you think shortly after I understand you're dependent on others to get the information to you, and plus or minus April, then at that point, can you make it public, or is there something that needs to happen in the interim?
Well, so that's where the kits are sitting. They haven't all been analyzed yet. We're really dependent on the agencies that are doing the entering the information into the system to see if there's any DNA in them. So the process is slow, but we're really the recipients of it more than we have that much ability to tell, the police who are doing the DNA analysis that they have to speed it up. We don't really have that ability. So I think we will have identified where all the kits are sitting, and then we can figure out how to get all the DNA information entered into Track It.
Okay. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. See you. In our district last spring, we had a rash. It was only in Prince George's, to my knowledge, not in the inner part of the district. A rash of teenagers doing car break-ins, smashing windows, all that kind of stuff. And we worked with the police, the county police, and also with the Laurel City Police to try to stop it and to try to find what's going on. And one of the things that it reminded me of was the power of cameras. In the areas where there were a lot of cameras, both people having cameras on their houses and businesses having cameras on their buildings, and where the public had set up cameras, it made a lot of difference in terms of that. And I remember this is back during the O'Malley administration, I remember the City College Park got a series of grants from you all for cameras. The University of Maryland, at that time, it's probably changed since then, had over 600 cameras all over campus, and the City College Park had like 20. And so the idea was to make it more balanced. So I'm just curious, strategically, what's going on with your office and cameras these days?
So I'll ask Quinn. Quinn, is there a grant that would be available to a public safety?
Yes, there are several grants within our office that can support cameras. Over the last couple of years, license plate reads has been a major tick up in requests for law enforcement agencies. But I don't have like the breakdown of that. If you want, I can provide that.
Yeah, if you could get us the data on sort of how much money we're putting out each year for cameras and kind of what the strategy is, because the technology's improved, it's become more ubiquitous. Obviously, people have cell phones and all that kind of stuff. It seemed to me, looking at these problems, that there's one community that is not in a municipality. It's in Adelphi, but it's right next to the university, and they have either one or none of public cameras. And it was sharp contrast to the city of Laurel, where there are lots of cameras. And it just struck me that low cost, not dangerous way to both deter crime, but also to hold folks accountable. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Sally.
Just follow up with what you were talking about. We know there's a timeline that you have going back to the sexual assault, the kids that is, and I know that we would like the information. Is there a way that you can still, at the timeline, give us the information that you have, and then tell us how many more maybe possibly that you're working on? So at least possibly, Madam Chair, we can have that information.
I can get you the information that's currently in the system.
That'd be great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions with regard to MFR. Or focus areas. There's some discussion about the expungement and shielding, working with the judiciary and DPSES. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So a number of years ago, the governor expunged a lot of records for people. And so we wanted to see if we could figure out if that was really making a difference. And we don't have a plan. This is a 3-year plan, so that was probably the one we have the least going for it at the moment. But I thought it was important to include because it had such an impact on such a big number of people in Maryland. So we work closely with the judiciary in a lot of ways. Right now, we're working particularly on pretrial. That's the focus, the JRA focus. But at some point, I think it's really important that we also look at, what was the result of the expungement and the shielding that the governor did a few years ago.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit to some of the rape kit issues and the hospitals getting reimbursed under SARU. And I know when you came in, there was quite a backlog, but there's still quite a backlog in terms of the hospital reimbursements, is my understanding.
I think we are not. I mean,
I don't believe there's a backlog.
Yeah, I don't think we have a backlog.
Are we talking about salary payments?
Yeah.
No, they're about a month behind, which they receive all the month's information and then it goes out for payment. So it's usually a month difference, but there should not be a backlog.
Okay.
We put a lot of effort to getting that caught up.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I think I have some other questions that we can take offline, but does anyone have any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a bunch of public testimony, folks who would like to testify. I'm just going to call you up in, well, if we could leave that chair, do you mind? Or were you sitting there?
I was sitting there.
Okay, so we'll do this in groups of 2. So Stephanie Powers and Lisa Jordan, please, and you will each get 2 minutes.
Would you like me to bring my chair up so you can do it 3?
We don't need to go back to it, so no. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Lisa Jordan with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Thank you for allowing us to testify today. As you know, GOCAP controls much of the funding for sexual assault survivors and services, and they're also one of the key partners in the efforts to support sexual assault forensic exams. I do want to acknowledge that there have been significant improvements at GOCAP. I think they inherited a very, very difficult situation, and things are getting better. Nonetheless, this is the end of the term. I think this is now their responsibility, and we hope that you help them continue to make progress. CASA, as the State Sexual Assault Coalition, certifies rape crisis centers. We advocate with state entities. We provide a statewide voice for our members. You're going to hear from some of the individual programs. I don't want to say what they will say, but I do want to give you kind of an overview of some of what's going on in the field. Certainly demand is up, cases are more complex, and I will also say that whatever your politics are, the federal government is presenting true challenges for us. Grants have been delayed, planning is difficult, reductions in the federal workforce means that fewer people are using private resources, more people are asking for public services, donations are absolutely down. This idea that we could fill in deficits with private donations is not correct. Just last week, the federal government asked state health departments to rewrite grant proposals that have already been submitted to fit the federal government's new priorities. So we are expecting that similar things may happen to some of our own grants. That means state funding is all the more important. And in terms of state funds, the legislature has provided $1 million for the past several years to MCASA that we then distribute most of that to the programs directly. I just want to thank you for that. And I also want to say that whether you planned it this way or not, that money has been hugely important to being able to respond to the difficulties at the federal level. I remind you, I know you know, the budget reflects Maryland's values. Please protect and support continued funding. That $1 million has been removed this year. We are hoping to have it back. I know our Domestic Violence Coalition is in the same situation and ask that you listen to their plea as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Stephanie Powers, and I'm the Executive Director of the Care Healing Center, which is Carroll County's Sexual Assault and Human Trafficking Agency. I come before you today to urge you to maintain and continue the legislative allocation that Lisa was speaking about for Maryland's rape crisis centers. On October 15th, our hotline rang at 10 a.m. It was the hospital calling for an advocate to come to sit with a child. When they arrived, it was a 14-year-old who had finally gotten the courage to tell her parents what had been happening to her. For the last 3 years, she had been sexually abused by a family friend, and it wasn't until the child had sat through one of our presentations in her classroom that she realized what was happening, and she had the words to finally define it. Her family was given the information, education, support on how to navigate this loss, betrayal, and crime. And since that time, our agency has provided the family with counseling, advocacy for both the mother and the daughter, recognizing that sexual assault impacts the entire family unit, working both through the trauma and the grief that they've experienced, helping them to rebuild safety and trust piece by piece. This is what your funding makes possible. Not just a one-time response, but the long, steady work of healing that follows, ensuring that no survivor or their family has to ever go through this alone. The need is certainly growing. However, resources have remained the same. As of January, my agency has provided services to 178 survivors in Carroll County, which is already 77% of last year's total clients served. At a time when federal funding streams have been unpredictable and delayed, the legislative allocation has provided stability. It has allowed us to retain trained advocates, keep our helpline staffed, and respond immediately when survivors need us. Right now, survivors are hearing messages that their words are not enough. When they call us in the middle of the night, our response must continue to be, we believe you and that you are not alone, and maintain this message across all of Maryland. On behalf of all of the survivors that we serve and those who have not yet found the courage to call, I respectfully ask for your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so I hear that number correctly, you said you served 178 people in January, which is 78%?
As of January, since the beginning of the fiscal year. So from July to January, we've served 178 clients.
Okay, 78% of what, last year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Amanda Rodriguez and Wendy Myers. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Amanda Rodriguez. I am the CEO of Turnaround, a domestic violence and sexual violence service provider. We serve the larger part of the greater Baltimore area, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Howard County. Just to highlight the work that we do at Rape Crisis and Domestic Violence Service Providers, just in the last month, we served a 21-year-old survivor. Her abuser was more than 20 years her senior. He held her captive for several days and continuously physically and sexually assaulted her over that time frame, knowing that she could not flee due to the weather. She was strangled several times and sodomized, and during her captivity, she was threatened with weapons. We responded immediately, providing crisis response when she was seen at the hospital and offered shelter, therapy, and legal advocacy. Rape crisis and comprehensive domestic violence centers create safe spaces in an unhinged world, places where survivors like this young woman can sit and breathe and stretch and grow and begin again. We hold babies while their mothers attend trauma therapy. We provide hot meals when food stamps are unavailable. We answer calls in the middle of the night, like I did last weekend, for a 16-year-old trafficking survivor who is standing in the freezing cold with nowhere else to turn. This work is not abstract. It is human, it is urgent, and it matters. Between July 1st, 2024 and June 30th of 2025, Turnaround received more than 10,000 helpline calls, which was a 70% increase to the previous year. We provided crisis, shelter, legal, and therapy services to more than 1,770 survivors and their children, which was a 34% increase from the prior year. We reached over 23,000 individuals through outreach and prevention education. Every statistic is a person who had some of the most egregious acts committed against them and a family trying to rebuild their lives. We are a vital part of the criminal justice response and keeping our communities safe. We need your help to ensure that we can continue to provide the comprehensive care that our communities should expect. We are so appreciative of GOCAP, including level funding for regional navigators and VOCA this year, and we're asking that you restore the rape crisis and domestic violence funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Wendy Myers, and I am the Executive Director of Maryland Children's Alliance. Maryland Children's Alliance serves as the convener of Maryland's 24 child advocacy centers. Child advocacy centers serve child victims of physical and sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. This model utilizes the multidisciplinary team response to child abuse by bringing together law enforcement, child protective services, prosecutors, advocates, medical, and mental health providers. This approach streamlines coordination of interagency services, increases successful prosecution of perpetrators, and minimizes trauma through therapeutic interventions. On behalf of Maryland's 24 CACs, I am requesting an increase in the GOCAP budget funding to $1 million annually. Currently, we are funded at $300,000 to share, which equates to only $12,000 per jurisdiction in the state. Over the past 10 years, Maryland's child advocacy centers provided services to 54,137 children. In 2025 alone, Maryland CACs served 5,446 children. Last year, Maryland funded CACs at $55 per child victim served. While we appreciate the support, and we deeply do, provided to our CACs, we fall short compared to our neighboring states. For example, Delaware funds child advocacy centers at $620 per child. West Virginia funds $536 per child. And Virginia funds $179 per child. The U.S. national average, according to the National Children's Alliance, is $269 per child. According to a study by the University of Maryland, for every dollar spent on CAC services, the state would save $663 on other related services. When the state supports its child advocacy centers, it is not only benefiting economically, but also restoring the health and safety of our children. On behalf of our CACs, I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you. Laurie Ruth and Laura Jessic.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having us here today to hear our little area of this work. My name is Laurie Ruth. I'm the Public Policy Director at the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence. We are the federally recognized State Domestic Violence Coalition for Maryland and serve as the coordinating body of our programs, including the 19 COMAR compliant designated comprehensive domestic violence service providers across the state. We hear every day from our member programs about the challenges they face in responding to increased demand for services that went up dramatically during COVID and never went down. This new norm of higher numbers of clients with more complex needs, along with increased cost of living, have put a tremendous strain on our program's workforce. Of course, the current insecurity of federal funding streams adds a really unbearable amount of pressure on our service providers. Now is not the time to cut funding. Last year, our domestic violence program answered over 41,000 hotline calls and provided over 100,000 bed nights to families fleeing violence. The budget we're discussing today eliminates the $1 million of what we call GDVC funds, General Domestic Violence Center funds, which means comprehensive domestic violence providers will lose 1/3 of the state funds that are earmarked specifically for domestic violence services. Notably, our core state funding of approximately $2 million has not increased in over 2 decades. No increase in over 2 decades for our comprehensive programs. This $1 million that's no longer in the budget was originally $3 million in 2022, and it was actually thanks, I believe, to Ms. Lennig from GOCAP in her prior employment, who got Chair Barnes and Chair Gazzoni to legislatively put this money in the budget. That $3 million was then cut to $1.5 million and then was cut to $1 million. Cutting it now completely would be devastating to our programs. Importantly, state money is free from severe restrictive requirements attached to any federal money. I talked, Senator Lewis Young, I just wanted to let you know, I spoke with Nikki, whose last name just Thrash, from Hartley House on Tuesday. They had a legislative day down here, and she said they handled 169 human trafficking survivors that they are not really funded for, and they are also struggling to fund their AIP program, which is an unfunded mandate now in comprehensive programs because there is no funding for AIP programs. So that's just one example in your jurisdiction that I can give you. We just happen to be chatting about it. So we asked for this $100 million, not $100 million, that would be nice, but $1 million to be replaced, as well as for the MCASA, who has also lost their $1 million this year. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Laura Jessic, the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative and Sexual Assault Response Team Program Manager with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I'm here at the invitation of our director, Lisa Jordan, and you have heard from her about the importance of this funding. MCASA is the coalition of the rape crisis centers across the state of Maryland. And today I'd like to inform you of the continued delays and lack of prioritization in sexual assault evidence kit or rape kit testing and access to sexual assault forensic exams. While MCASA is grateful for the progress the legislator has made, including your work, Senator Hettleman, and the work GOCAP is doing to improve things, we do want to note that these substantial issues remain, including delays in rape kit testing that affect investigations and survivor access to justice and community safety, a second backlog of rape kits accruing at the state crime lab as they are unable to process test results and enter DNA into the DNA database known as CODIS, again, further delaying investigations and justice, restrictions on victim advocate access to the statewide SAKE tracking system, which limits oversight of the kit testing progress. Delays in entering the historical kits into the tracking system have made it nearly impossible to determine the status of Maryland's rape kit backlog. While the entry deadline for those kits is approaching, there is no plan on notifying survivors and providing them with access to track their kits. There's also difficulty accessing the time-sensitive sexual assault forensic exams. The programs that provide this care, known as SAFE programs, are already strained by outdated reimbursement regulations and new restrictions on VOCA funds for forensic nurse examiners, which will further affect these programs and survivor access. While these issues should not diminish the progress made in recent years, MCASA asks that you keep these matters in mind when reviewing the—
Are there any questions for this panel? All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who had planned to comment on GOCAP's budget? All right, GOCAP is concluded. Thank you. We will next call up Maryland Department of Transportation, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, and Kelly Norton is our budget analyst, and we'll review the analysis. Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to begin with page 1, where we have the operating budget summary. The budget for fiscal 2027 increases to approximately $700 million, a 3% increase compared to fiscal 2026. The pay-go budget summary is on page 2. The fiscal 2027 allowance increases to $356 million, or 1.3% from fiscal 2026. In fiscal 2026 and 2027, the $167 million in the governor's capital dedicated funding is from general obligation bonds. Exhibit 1 on page 5 shows the annual ridership across WMATA from fiscal 2020 through 2025. Total ridership increased by 9% to 264 million trips in fiscal 2025. On page 6 is Exhibit 2, showing the percentage change from the prior year for revenue miles, passengers per revenue mile, operating costs per revenue mile, and operating costs per passenger trip for both Metro Rail and Metro Bus service for fiscal 2021 through 2025. According to the MFR data, the fiscal 2025 decreases in revenue miles for both Metro Rail and Metro Bus, and increases in operating costs per revenue mile for both Metro Rail and Metro Bus. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows the fare box recovery rates. WMATA indicates that the MFR submission used in the creation of Exhibits 2 and 3 are incorrect. WMATA should explain the cause for the discrepancy and how the agency plans to mitigate discrepancies in future MFR submissions. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the overview of agency spending in fiscal 2027. The capital budget is $2.1 billion, with Maryland contributing 16.6%, or $354 million, and the operating budget is $2.7 billion, with 26%, or $711 million, coming from Maryland. Exhibit 5 on page 10 has the operating expenses by category. Personnel accounts for 72% of the proposed fiscal 2027 operating budget. The fiscal 2026 figures are the net expenses, while the fiscal 2027 are the gross expenses. WMATA should provide committee members with the fiscal 2026 gross operating expenses and discuss efforts to ensure consistent presentation of this data in future submissions. Moving to the operating revenues, Exhibit 6 on page 11 shows the proposed fiscal 2027 revenue sources. Here we have the operating revenues and operating subsidies from the jurisdictions. Operating revenues such as fare collection, advertising revenue, and parking facilities make up 25% of the fiscal 2027 budget, and the remaining 75% from the 3 jurisdictions. DC contributes the most at $746 million, and Maryland is the second largest contributor at $711 million. Looking to MDOT's 2026 Consolidated Transportation Program, or CTP, for WMATA, Exhibit 7 on pages 12 through 13 shows the 6-year program capital spending from fiscal 2026 to 2031. The chart shows the yearly $167 million in the governor's capital dedicated funding. The mandated base includes the first 3 components minus federal funds. The mandated base capital grows by the required 3% over the 6-year period, and the 6-year total is roughly $3.2 billion. WMATA's fiscal 2027 to 2032 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, totals $13.5 billion. On page 14, Exhibit 8 provides the 6-year capital program funding sources for the CIP. The largest contribution comes from the funding jurisdictions for approximately 45% of the 6-year funding. Federal funds comprise 30% of the 6-year total. The remaining sources are debt, prior year funding, and a prospective federal grant. Exhibit 9 on page 15 has the fiscal 2027 capital spending by category. Rail car-related spending is the highest category at $372 million, followed by bus facilities and paratransit at $340 million. However, if you combine the top 4 categories, over $1 billion will be spent on Metro Rail-related activities. Exhibit 10 on pages 15 through 16 shows the fiscal 2027 WMATA capital program funding sources and the expected Maryland contribution. Here you can see how the $354 million from Maryland contributes to the fiscal 2027 CIP. Exhibit 11 on page 16 shows the difference between the WMATA proposed budget and Maryland's proposed budget. WMATA is proposing $711 million from Maryland for operating, an additional $13 million compared to Maryland's proposed $698 million and $354 million for capital. If WMATA's proposed budget is enacted, there will be a budget amendment to match Maryland's operating budget to WMATA's. Moving on to the issues on page 18, WMATA and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments launched a joint initiative, DMV Moves, in June 2024 to create a unified vision and a sustainable funding model for the region's transit network. WMATA and the Council of Governments have endorsed the DMV Moves Task Force Plan. The DMV Moves Plan calls for an additional $460 million in capital funding from the 3 jurisdictions beginning in fiscal 2029. Maryland's contribution would be $152 million and grow 3% annually. The DMV Moves Plan would reduce the backlog of deferred maintenance, support modernizing the rail system, improve local bus service, create a regional bus priority network, and embrace regional rail. On page 19, Exhibit 12 shows a side-by-side breakdown of the current funding plan compared to the DMV Moves plan by capital phase. The current plan is programmed at $13.5 billion from 2027 through 2032. The DMV Moves plan is $18.3 billion, an additional $4.8 billion over the period. The DMV Moves plan would invest an additional $3.2 billion in the concept phase, which is the first main phase before an investment becomes a project or program. Exhibit 13 on page 20 shows the capital program investment by mode. It excludes debt service and revenue loss from capital projects. The DMV Moves plan would invest an additional $3.2 billion in rail and over $830 million into the bus system. On page 21 are the recommended actions, and they are to concur with the governor's allowance for the operating and pay-go budgets, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No questions. All right, thank you, Ms. Norton. Randy Clark, I'd like to call you.
Do you mind if we come together?
No,
Okay.
please, Madam Secretary.
Good afternoon, Chair Heddleman and members of the committee. I suspect you may be getting tired of seeing me, but it's always a pleasure to be here before you. For the record, I'm Katie Thompson, Acting Secretary of Transportation. I'm joined by Randy Clark, the General Manager and CEO of WMATA. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon to discuss WMATA and Maryland's funding of the WMATA system. And thank you again to Kelly Norton for her analysis as pertains to WMATA. The state remains committed to ensuring a safe and reliable transit system in the National Capital Region for Maryland's residents and for all the riders across the WMATA system. Hundreds of thousands of Marylanders rely on WMATA's transit service for their transportation needs, and WMATA is also a significant employer of workers from Maryland. It's important for the state to help ensure that these citizens, as well as others who live throughout the National Capital Region, have access to a safe and reliable transit system to get them to work, their doctor's appointments, the grocery store, and wherever else life may take them. To that end, the state continues to provide significant resources to support WMATA's capital and operating budget, including funding support to advance WMATA's joint development program to drive economic development and deliver much-needed housing near transit. Now I'll hand it over to General Manager and CEO Clark for his update.
Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it. Good. We in the afternoon yet? Yes, we are. Good afternoon, Charlie. Great seeing you again, and members of the committee. Honored to be here with you again, and just really appreciate Acting Secretary Thompson's leadership, and really look forward to working with her and welcome her on board in her new very important role here in the state. Thank you, Kelly, for your analysis. And first year doing this for Metro. I think Steve is enjoying his retirement right at the moment. So thank you for your analysis. I'm also joined with Charlie Scott. Many people know Charlie. He's our Government Affairs Director for Maryland. I think everyone knows. He knows more people in Maryland than almost everybody. So Charlie's here as well. 2025 was kind of a banner year for us at Metro. Really helped strengthen our regional transit network and our partnerships. I'm really proud to mention that we won the what's called the American Public Transportation Association. So APTA, it's our Association for Transit. We won the Outstanding Transit System in North America Award this year as the top system in the country. So really proud of the work that my 13,000 colleagues and teammates have delivered this year. Going to mention a few things that just have happened in the last year of Metro as we work through kind of the presentation. And to me, it's really, there's stats, but it's the value we provide to the region in so many ways. We are the ticket to people's activities. We are the ticket to healthcare, education, jobs, growing the economy, and that's what we're really proud of at Metro. In the last year of the rail system, we actually had a 90% on-time performance, so our highest performance in a long time. And many things, as this acting secretary mentioned, related to reliability is what makes our system work really well. We launched contactless payments, so debit credit card. You can now use that bus or train fare, and that has actually helped us enhance our fare collection, but also reduce costs and make it more flexible for people to use the service. We provide 7% more bus service this year with our bus network redesign. That also has increased reliability for the first time in almost 6 years that we had an increase in reliability. And it's also a much safer and more accessible system where we did our network redesign. We increased our network frequency network as well by now half of our customers have service of 12 minutes or better on our bus system, which is really important, especially for people that might be on the middle to lower income access points throughout the region. Something I'm really proud of is we ended up with the lowest crime rate in the history of Metro last year. So safety is everything for us at Metro. It's our core value. And we were able to come in at, again, the lowest crime rate we've ever had, doing that between our police department, our local partners, and as well as hiring crisis intervention specialists, so people that go out in the system, engage people that might be having non-police needed activity out on the system. So really proud of that, and we received an award from the National Association on Safety as well. I think, as Kelly mentioned, we had just about 270 million trips on the system. We had 12 days with over 1 million last year. That grew 6% ridership year over year. We've led the country for over 2 years straight on ridership growth. We are already seeing great ridership growth again this winter. The storm has clearly set us back. We had a really, we got hit pretty hard there for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. But just last week, we had another day. It was 970,000 in February. So we know we're poised for 1 million a day, as soon as the weather turns here officially. So we're hoping to get to 1.1 at some point this year. So really accelerating ridership growth. As I think Kelly mentioned, Maryland makes up a big chunk of our riders. It's about 130,000 people daily that use rail and about 107,000 use bus. And we again continue to invest in our Maryland service to give even more people the affordable access to great transportation that they need. The Assistant Secretary also mentioned the partnership about development, and it's something we're really working hard on at Metro. And I want to highlight a couple projects. This last year, we broke ground on 2 joint development projects, one at Grosvenor, and it's a senior housing component of a 3-building complex. And it is fantastic work we're doing up there with Montgomery County and the state to accelerate development, especially around transit. The other one is at New Carrollton. It was actually the 3rd parcel that was in development, and this was also senior, and this was affordable senior housing, all connected around the Metro. And New Carrollton, as you know, the footprint is really turning into a regional transit center. And I'm sure Holly will mention it with the Purple Line, Metro Red Line, local bus, Metro bus, MARC trains, and Amtrak trains. So we're going to continue to accelerate our development there, and that's one of our major administrative buildings with over 1,000 employees as the anchor for that station area. We were also able to select developers and do events with both the governor and a lot of local officials. On North Bethesda, we have a 14-acre project that we're doing, kind of a life science center up there with Montgomery County and the state. And we just did an event with the governor at Capitol Heights where we're trying to, we just selected a developer to activate that as well for several hundred units of housing right near the Capitol Heights station using some kind of parking facility that's not very underutilized. And now we're going to have homes for people and they'll be able to live right next to Metro. Now, I will say a lot of our performance was driven because we had some really good partnership, and Maryland was a big part of that in 2018. So, and I know many of you are aware of this, what was called dedicated funding in 2018 was a really big deal. It's when all the 3 states came together. Metro was in a pretty bad spot, significant fires, safety issues, and came up with $500 million to support Metro's capital maintenance program. And it was the first time really to start having a true capital maintenance program. And while that was great, and it's kind of led to a lot of the results we're at today, unfortunately that funding was never indexed. And it's kind of like Social Security would be worth a lot less today if it wasn't indexed. And we've lost a significant amount of purchasing power since 2018. So while $500 million is still a lot of money, $500 million in 2026 is not what it was in 2018, and it certainly will not be in 2035 what it was in 2018. And at the time, Maryland did try to have that index, but unfortunately between the 3 states, that agreement could not come together. So as Kelly mentioned, we formed a group with council governments, and we called that DMV Moves. And it was an 18-month program, very public, very transparent, to go through the true needs that Metro has to solidify our capital program and ensure safe, frequent, reliable service into the future. And then Metro could be held accountable to deliver to that plan. And all the leaders in the region actually voted on this. And between our board, the council government's board, and then locally, every member of the Metro Compact's local governing body has passed a resolution in full support. So that's everything from Loudoun County to Prince George's and Montgomery County to the city of Alexandria and everyone in between, all saying that they agree with the process and that $460 million is that needed money to re-baseline Metro, grows at 3%. Metro now is held accountable to deliver this long-term capital program and ensure that we don't kind of keep coming back and forth as a roller coaster every few years. So that is a big, we know it's a big ask. It's something that we're working, obviously, really collaborating with the administration on. Look forward to working on the House and the Senate side. What is unique about us, obviously, is this has to get done between Virginia, Maryland, and DC all at the same time. And so Virginia does have a bill that we expect to happen on Sunday in their budget that identifies how they're going to handle their component. Maryland, I know there's a bill, and I want to really thank Senator Augustine. He's the sponsor and co-sponsor Senator Feldman moving a bill, your colleagues, and then Delegate Corman or Chair Corman is moving that on the House side. And then we believe DC, their cycle comes next. Just their Virginia goes first, Maryland and DC, just the way the budget cycles work. But we're confident on the DC side as well. So, in the wrap up, we are running really well. With that said, we do not want to go backwards. We want to try to solidify that funding, ensure that we have a long-term capital program with predictability, really for the first time in decades, and deliver great results. And you have a partner in Metro that wants to help accelerate development on the Blue Line corridor, which I know is a state priority, and really make sure that we're helping with environmental goals, workforce goals, all those things that we've talked about over the last few years. So again, really honored to be with you all. Thank you for your ongoing support of Metro, and happy to take any questions or comments you may have.
Thanks a lot. Any questions? I got a couple.
Sure. I figure you did, Senator.
Yeah. Well, one is, I've been following this discussion in New York about free bus service. And I didn't have a strong feeling about it until I read a column in the New York Times like a week or two ago, talking about all the experiments with free bus service that have been done around the country. And the essence of the argument was that fare collection, specifically on buses, I think, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. That, and I know this from having ridden buses, is fare collection slows down people getting on and off buses. So it makes the experience less attractive. And in this article, it made the point that where they have tested it, they've seen material increases in bus usage. And also, this was actually written by a former public defender who said that he spent a lot of time defending cases of folks who had not paid their fare or gotten in some kind of problem. What do you know about that? What do you think about that? Does it make any sense?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I was going to say Holly's going to answer. No, I'm just, I love her. No, this is, and the reason I say that is it's an ongoing topic in our industry.
Right.
And it just didn't pop up yesterday. This has been going on for a while. And I would say it's certainly not monolithic, and every system is different. So I think it's clear there's a lot of systems. Like if you're in a ski town, charging a fare to get people around a ski town or a beach town seems probably not overly important because you're just trying to deal with congestion on maybe a 1 or 2 street kind of small town. Then you get into medium-sized systems where maybe the juice and the squeeze ratio is a little different. If it takes this much to collect and you only collect this much, and that's a community decision. For us, again, there's no right answer to this question. It depends on what policy goals you're trying to get and being eyes wide open of the implications on policy. So for Metro, fares make up a lot of money.
How much?
Like overall fares this year will be about $500 million.
$500 million out of a total operating budget of?
2.5.
So 20%.
Yeah, and well, we're probably going to end up closer to 25. We're hoping in 26 be closer to 25%.
Okay.
Now, most of that is rail.
What's that ratio there?
85% rail right at the moment,
okay.
maybe something like that.
Okay.
Now, it never used to be. So pre-COVID, it was not that way. And we have significant fare collection issues on bus. So we've worked really hard. Fare evasion on rail is down. We think about the same level as pre-COVID. In some ways, maybe even lower in certain parts. On the bus side, I will say in Maryland, it is very bad.
Fare evasion is very
We have the highest fare evasion in Maryland of the 3 states by a significant amount. We have the lowest amount in Virginia. Next is DC.
So Marylanders are voting for free bus rides with their feet.
Well, that's not the policy or the law.
I understand.
But the actions would indicate that. So I would say this. There's value, I think, for some people to, you're clearly going to move a bus generally faster. Now, we have contactless payment, so we move a bus pretty fast. So there's a little value to that. I wouldn't go overboard on that, but there's a little value. There's clearly a value that you'll get more people on the system because you're reducing entry, right? Now, I don't know if you're going to get maybe more new people. You might get the same people more often, and depending on the community and the corridor or whatnot. But there are other challenges. So one is the revenue, and I think we would say respectfully, and I think you would agree, nothing is free. Someone has to pay, and so one of the things in bus that has been talked a lot in our industry is, I've never seen a survey of bus riders, bus customers, ever say fare is in their top priority, and I've been doing this for 25 years. Hands down, it's frequency and reliability.
Right.
And almost universally, someone will have no problem paying a fare to have good service. And the debate in our industry is if you go fare free, and so let's say for us it's, make it up, $50 million. And you all decide you want that, and we get Virginia, and it has to be a metro decision because of our compact, so all 3 would have to agree. That $50 million would then be forfeited out of running additional service. Unless we get $100 million to do both. So that's one factor. The other factor that has been around on this topic is safety security. There is undeniable bigger safety security element when you go fare free. And the debate about that is, for instance, what is the ability to remove someone off of the system, and how do you secure that? And that has been an well-studied aspect in our industry, which security issues definitely go up. And therefore, generally, you usually need more security to help manage that. So I would, in holistic, it's not an easy topic.
No, I appreciate that.
Hopefully that was helpful.
That was very helpful. I think when we talked like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you were talking about how post-COVID you were thinking about or expecting or praying or some verb in there to increase off-commuting rail use. To what extent is the growth in ridership that as opposed to commuter?
Sure. I don't have the exact percentage, but I think I would say if it's the prayers worked, or whatever version that we edged, if you, like you mentioned, Sender. So our weekend ridership is very strong. We actually carry more people now than we did before the pandemic on the weekend. And we
Is it material?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Like once the weather breaks here, we do 1 million a weekend between Saturday and Sunday. And we see that continuing to grow. That's 2 factors. One is there's an obvious affordability of using the system versus car ownership. We are seeing a lot more leisure travel where people, if they want to go to a museum, a game, those types of things. We are also seeing evening ridership continue to grow, and we're seeing growth across all markets.
Have you changed service, or
yes.
Is there a strategy that has driven that in terms of service or promotion or
for sure
pricing? Or
so a couple of years ago, we particularly said we are going to run good service 7 days a week.
Right, I remember you.
And you remember that conversation, and it pays off everywhere universally in transit. And again, I've been doing this for 25 years. Whether you're in Germany, Australia, United States, people want frequent, reliable, safe service. Right. And when you deliver it, they ride a lot more. And new people ride because it's faster and more convenient than the alternative. But with that said, we have now seen an acceleration on the peak hours. Rush hour is back. Anyone that says rush hour is back has not been out in rush hour, especially in the DC market. I assume it's probably similar in Baltimore. But we are very busy at rush hour again. Now, federal return to office definitely probably did some of that. With that said, there's a lot of federal layoffs that probably negated some of that as well. But we are definitely seeing
Are they back to pre-COVID levels?
No, but we are growing by the week and by the month. And like, so I take the red line every day, and we run a 4 to 5 minute headway, a frequency on the red line. And almost every time I can barely get on my rail car.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't apologize. That's what I want every day. Yeah, I'm one of the only people that are really happy about that, sir.
I understand. Yeah, that's probably exactly right. That's probably exactly right.
Yeah, so I just say that we are trying to grow across all markets and to serve, because the more people we serve, the more lives we impact in a positive way.
I got a couple more.
Sure.
On the development around metro stations, I was glad to hear about the projects you've got on New Carrollton. I know a lot about, but I'm glad to hear the others. One of the discussions that I've had with the Maryland Transit Administration is about MARC stops in terms of development, and I think it's fair to say that the MTA has been over years slow to the table on this, and it's definitely picked up under this administration, which is great. But given the governor's and the legislature's big focus on expanding housing supply, one of the things that I hear in my community, in my county, I would say, is the governor says we need to have lots more zoning for multifamily development. And the people in the county say, we have lots of zoning for multifamily development. We have it at transit stops. And so there seems to be a mismatch there that you're trying to fix, and I get that. One of the things that I noticed when I talked to MTA was, I guess because they were trying to start slow or have successes, there seemed to be a number of MARC stops where there was kind of nothing in the works, even though there was strong support locally to do it. And I'm curious how you're managing your strategy with your stops, particularly in Prince George's, but also in Montgomery. Are you following the lead of the county? Are you following the lead of the state? Are you taking the lead? How does that work to figure out what you're going to do at these stations?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, Senator. So I can obviously speak to the metro piece. So we, of course, operate across 3 states, so it's a little different. So what I would say is it's not monolithic again.
Okay.
So we own property in places that we would like to see become active uses. In other places, we don't. Or
you don't own the property, or you don't want them to be active uses?
No, we all want them to be active. We don't own the property. Or we own slivers and pieces that are not overly usable.
They got to be assembled, yeah.
Exactly, so North Bethesda is a good example. We have a big parcel, and that has been very collaborative between us, the county, and the state, and then we had actually, after a federal grant, to help with the second entrance. So that's all levels of government working well together. We're doing one at West Falls Church that I would say was very collaborative between Fairfax County and Metro, because that's, again, our property. There's others that, I think part of the issue that is we get told a lot, hey, Metro, why don't you do X? And what we say is, well, we're not a developer. We run trains and buses, and we need a local partner to help get that last piece, usually financing, to move the project along. And zoning is definitely a part of this, because the developer needs to pencil the project out to make it valuable enough to do the work and get the units and all that type of thing.
But it actually, I'm not an expert on this. My county councilman is an expert on this. I don't think that's a problem in Prince George's County, because years ago, the county zoned our metro stops for intense development.
No, part of it is whether they can get the rents or the costs. So that's what I meant about penciling out the financing.
The economics.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's a part that is, if we have what we would call transit facilities at that station, it might be a busway or a surface parking lot. Then there's the transit replacement cost. So if there's a surface parking lot here.
You got to move something.
Yeah, but we might say, let's take that and put it into a garage. Well, that garage now might cost $25 million, and we can't pay for that. So what we might say in the joint development is, we'll put in the property, someone else does this, someone else does this.
I got it.
So I say all that to be, we have a pretty active real estate development team. And I think we are trying to lean in. The last few years, we've taken an assertive step to lean in to say, hey, partners, how do we push these things faster and harder? And if there's ways that we could help others with that, I would say Metro, I was lucky when I got there. Metro has a very well-developed real estate strategy with our properties. And it's not that we're necessarily special. We might have just been first with some people that knew what they were doing. And I think that now is starting to pay some big dividends. And if we can help share with that, we're happy to do so.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate it. Secretary, do you want to make a comment?
I wanted to just say that MDOT has long supported transit-oriented development throughout Maryland, and we've worked with local communities and counties to make that happen. Governor Moore, in this legislative session, introduced a transit-oriented development bill that would help us leverage state-owned property, working with local communities to develop those and ensure they're supported by transportation at high-density areas. And so we're really excited about the General Assembly moving that legislation forward because we think it'll be an additional accelerator to allow us to develop some of these state-owned properties and build affordable housing at numerous locations.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Senator, if I can, I just want one more spot.
Go ahead.
Montgomery County did something really strategic a few years ago. They did an abatement program, and they specifically did that for big development at metro stations. So that might be something that,
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
so they did a whole tax incentive for tax abatement.
Tax abatement.
To get developers to build. And I will say, a couple of our developments in Montgomery County would definitely not have happened without them taking that positive legislation. So that might be an
And Prince
example.
George's does not do that.
I'm not familiar with, I think Prince George's has talked a variety of versions, but Montgomery County took a very
that's
bold
helpful.
action a few years ago.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that concludes this hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Oh, they're public witnesses. My apologies. You're free to go.
We're excused, okay.
I'm sorry about that. Yes. The public witness, of course. Brian Wivel and Lindsay Mendelson.
Hello, Senators. Brian Wyville here with Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689. Here, honestly, just to echo and give kudos to WMATA on the actual, it's not often that you have a transit union coming forward and saying that WMATA is doing a great job on things, but I do think this is absolutely an agency moving in the correct direction. Everything that was mentioned about the proactive efforts to go out there and secure agreements with the funding jurisdictions to tackle the capital backlog have been a serious, year and a half plus effort to find that money. We strongly support that the committee passes a favorable report on the budget as presented and also keeps an eye on the future funding years to make sure that WMATA is able to get the additional capital assistance that it needs to tackle its backlog.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Lindsay Mendelson. I'm the Senior Transportation Campaign Representative with the Maryland Sierra Club, also a transit rider. Sierra Club has 3 transportation funding priorities this year. One is funding the Be More Bus Plan. The second is keeping up with the state of good repair for MTA. And the third is stable funding for WMATA. We urge the committee to program the additional $150 million to support WMATA's capital funding needs identified in the DMV Moves Task Force and also support SB 281 to that effect. This funding, as mentioned, is really needed to ensure that WMATA can deliver safe, frequent service that millions of people rely on to access jobs, school, education, healthcare, and recreation in the DC area. There are immense benefits that WMATA provides on a daily basis to the public. A 2024 report indicated that WMATA keeps 1.2 million cars off the road each day and avoids an additional 1.2 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions each year. Now, that's the same emission savings as if all the homes in Arlington County, Virginia, didn't use energy for one full year. Additionally, transportation is the second largest household cost, with car ownership costing upwards of $12,000 a year. Metro estimates that it saves households that ride rather than drive $10,000 per year. We also encourage the committee to identify stable, dedicated sources of revenue for WMATA operating and capital funding and support bills like Senate Bill 457, sponsored by Senator Rosapep, that would help jurisdictions capture the value of land around metro stations, as well as Senate Bill 389, the transit-oriented development bill that would remove red tape that would make it easier to build housing and jobs around transit stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. I think that now does conclude the hearing. on the budget. And the next topic up is the Maryland Transportation Administration. And we have Samuel Quist just taking his seat.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Samuel Quist from the Department of Legislative Services, presenting the budget analysis for the Maryland Transit Administration. On page 1 of the report, the MTA operating budget increases by $71.1 million, or 5.4%, to $1.4 billion. And on page 2 of the report, the capital budget increases by $125.9 million, or 15.8%, to $921.6 million. Turning to the performance analysis section of the report on page 7, Exhibit 1 is showing MTA ridership data as reported by the Federal Transit Administration from fiscal 2019 through fiscal 2026. Fiscal 2025 ridership was over 70 million boardings and represented a 9% increase from the previous year. This was the 4th consecutive year that MTA ridership increased following significant declines due to the pandemic in fiscal 2020 and 2021. However, fiscal 25 ridership was roughly only about 75% of ridership in fiscal 19, the year before the pandemic began. On page 8, Exhibit 2 is showing MTA on-time performance data. On-time performance data by mode ranged from 73% for bus service to a high of 92% for mobility transit service, and was roughly similar to the prior year level. Exhibit 3 on page 9 shows farebox recovery data. Farebox recovery illustrates the percentage of operating costs that are recovered through passenger fares. In fiscal 2025, the farebox recovery by mode ranged from a low of 2% for Metro to a high of 15% for Washington commuter bus service. You can see the largest area of increase was in MARC and Washington commuter bus service. I'm going to turn ahead in the report to page 14, Exhibit 6, which is showing the overview of fiscal 27 spending. This pie chart shows that a little over half of the MTA operating budget supports bus operations, and approximately a quarter supports rail operations, which includes the MTA Light Rail, the Baltimore Metro system, and the MARC train service. And then the remaining roughly quarter of the budget includes the MTA administration and the statewide programming, which includes funding for locally operated transit systems. Exhibit 7 on pages 15 and 16 show the proposed budget changes. Within the overall $71.1 million increase, the largest component of that are an increase of $33.7 million for personnel expenses and $28.9 million for service contracts related to the provision of transit services. Personnel expense growth reflects the net increase of 104 positions in the budget, which I'll discuss more in the next page when we get into personnel. The transit service contracts reflect growth in contracts for commuter bus service, mobility paratransit service, and MARC train service based on ridership increases projected for those modes, as well as increases in the cost of those contracts. On the bottom of page 16 is an overview of the personnel data for MTA. As I mentioned earlier, there was a net increase of 104 positions in the fiscal 27 budget. There's actually 139 new positions included in the budget, but due to a decrease of 35 positions due to transfers and abolishments, that gets to the 104 net increase. There are 32 positions which are transferred out of MTA to the MDOT Secretary's Office. This is part of an agency-wide consolidation of IT-related positions, which has resulted in a decrease in positions across MDOT modes as those positions are transferred to the Secretary's Office. And then within the 139 new positions, the majority of those, about 134, are MTA police and related positions, which are added in preparation for the opening of the Purple Line to allow for the recruitment and training of those positions to begin. There are also an increase of 5 new positions related to the MTA apprenticeship program. The Department of Legislative Services is recommending that 5 of the new positions delete funding for those and instead reclassify existing vacant positions for those purposes. Turning to discussion of the MTA capital budget, on page 18 of the analysis, there is a table showing federal discretionary grant funding awarded to MTA between federal fiscal 21 and 25. This awarded funding totaled about $7.25 billion. Additionally, MTA has pending applications for about $6.5 million. You can see that the bulk of the $7.25 billion in awarded funding was for 2 projects in federal fiscal 23, awards for the Frederick Douglass Tunnel and the Susquehanna River Bridge replacement project. Exhibit 9 on page 19 shows a breakdown of the 6-year capital funding for MTA in the 2026 Consolidated Transportation Plan. This totals $5.7 billion, and the majority of this spending, about 57%, is for system preservation projects. On pages 20 and 21, Exhibit 10 shows a list of the different capital projects that make up the fiscal 27 capital funding. Capital funding in fiscal 27 totals $965.5 million. And at the top of the page, the table on page 20, you can see that the biggest funding area, the largest funding area by far, is for the Purple Line project, about $240 million of the total, followed by funding for the Red Line, the Metro rail car signal system overhauls and replacement project, the light rail modernization program, and the Frederick Douglass Tunnel project, which round out the top 5. On page 22, Exhibit 11 shows the cash flow changes between the fiscal 26 budget as introduced and the fiscal 26 working appropriation and the fiscal 27 allowance. Fiscal 26 funding has increased by $57.3 million, and fiscal 27 funding increases by $133 million over the prior year working appropriation. Exhibit 12 on pages 23 and 24 shows the breakdown of the changes between the fiscal 26 budget as introduced and the fiscal 26 working appropriation, which is $57.3 million greater. At the top of page 23, you can see that the majority of this increase is due to increases in funding for alternative fuel bus procurement, the Purple Line project, and locally operated transit system procurements. On pages 25 and 26, Exhibit 13 is showing the components of the increase between the 26 working appropriation and the 27 allowance. In total is $133 million. The largest components of this increase are increased funding for the Frederick Douglass Tunnel project, bus procurement, and the light rail modernization program. Exhibit 14 on page 27 shows a breakdown of the 27 capital budget between first-year funding and ongoing capital funding. First-year funding makes up about 16%, or $151 million of the budget, while ongoing funding is about 84%, or $814 million. and the tables on page 28 and 29 give a breakdown of the various projects that receive first-year design and construction funding in fiscal 26 and 27. On the bottom of page 29, there is discussion of changes from the previous CTP. There is one project that is added to the development and evaluation program in the 26 CTP, the 5th Division bus project, which will be the design and construction for a 5th bus division to support increased service for buses in MTA. Other than that, there are no projects that were in the 2025 CTP that were removed from the 26 CTP. Turning to the major issues section of the analysis, beginning on page 30, the first issue is further discussion of the Purple Line project, the Red Line project, and the Light Rail Modernization project, which are the three largest components of fiscal 27 capital funding. The Purple Line project is ongoing. The construction of that is over 87% complete, and the opening date is now projected to be in January of 2028. Over the last couple years, the committee narrative adopted by the budget committees has requested that MTA provide quarterly updates on the construction of the Purple Line. DLS is recommending a committee narrative in the fiscal 27 budget bill that would continue to require that construction funding update reports. The Red Line Transit Project began its federal NEPA process in May of 2024. However, that NEPA process was paused in June of 2025. There is additional funding for preliminary design and engineering efforts for the Red Line in the fiscal 27 capital budget. However, due to that pause of the federal NEPA process, the DLS analysis is asking MDOT to comment on what the planned uses of that funding budgeted in fiscal 27 are. And DLS is also recommending committee narrative, which would request a report from MTA outlining what the next steps for the Red Line project will be, including the timing as well as the available funding for that project. The Light Rail Modernization Program is a $1.4 billion project which is planned to overhaul the MTA light rail system. Funding for this was moved from the Development and Evaluation Program to the Primary Construction Program in last year's CTP, and initial construction funding was allocated in fiscal 26 and is budgeted to continue in fiscal 27. The second issue that's discussed in the analysis on pages 32 and 33 is discussion of the work group on the reorganization of the Maryland Transit Administration. This work group was established by Chapter 462 last session, and the work group met 5 times over the 2025 interim. The work group was tasked with studying possible potential options for reorganizing the administration of transit services currently administered by MTA, as well as looking into existing contracts, collective bargaining agreements, federal fund agreements, and governance structures for transit in other states. The work group submitted a report to the General Assembly in December, which outlined its recommendations and findings. The work group report recommended that 2 new boards be established within MTA, a Baltimore Core Services Board and a Commuter Services Board. The report recommended that the Baltimore Core Services Board be comprised of seats appointed by the governor, the mayor of Baltimore City, and the county executives of Anne Arundel and Baltimore counties, as well as the MTA administrator and the Secretary of Transportation. And the responsibilities of the Core Services Board would include a wide range of items, including duties currently held by the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. The Commuter Services Board would oversee and provide advice and guidance related to MARC train and commuter bus service. There is legislation that was introduced in the Senate and the House this session that would effectuate the recommendations of the work group. At the bottom of page 33, there's a note that there was budget bill language in last year's budget bill which restricted $150,000 in the MDOT budget pending the submission of a report from the work group. DLS has determined that the report submitted in December of 2025 is in compliance with the budget bill language, and therefore DLS recommends the release of that $150,000 in restricted funding in the 26 budget bill, and DLS will process a letter to this effect if there are no objections that are raised by the budget committees during budget hearings. The last issue that's covered in the MTA analysis on pages beginning on page 34 is discussion of the 10-year MTA capital needs inventory and prioritization report, which was released in July of 2025. This covers the period of fiscal 26 through 2035 and discusses the total amount of capital investment needs that are required by MTA. As shown in Exhibit 16 on the bottom of page 34, these 10-year capital needs total about $9.9 billion. Of this, state of good repair needs make up about 2/3 or $6.6 billion. And Exhibits 17 and 18 on pages 36 and 37 break down the state of good repair needs by category and by MTA mode. On page 36, this pie chart shows the largest category of state of good repair needs are for vehicles at about 41%. Vehicles include transit vehicles such as light rail vehicles, metro rail cars, Baltimore, the MARC train, locomotives and rail cars, as well as buses. Page 37, Exhibit 18 shows that of the total state of good repair needs, the largest needs by mode are in metro at about 31%, core bus at about 23%, and light rail at about 21%. The CNI report finds that of the $6.6 billion in total state of good repair needs over the 10-year period, funding is available of about $5.1 billion to $6.1 billion, of which about $3.6 billion is programmed in the 2025 CTP, which was their most recent MDOT CTP at the time of the release of this report. This funding availability results in a funding gap over the 10-year period of about $500 million to $1.5 billion, depending on actual revenues and budget amount budgeted. However, the report finds that the amount funding for state of good repair projects in the current CTP will allow MTA to reduce its current state of good repair backlog by approximately 45% over the next 5 years. The DLS recommended actions are shown on pages 38 and 39 of the report. The first recommended action, as mentioned earlier, was to delete funding for 5 new positions and instead use the repurposing of vacant positions for those purposes. The second recommended action is to continue to adopt a committee narrative which would continue to request bi-monthly status updates on the Purple Line project. The third recommended action is to adopt committee narrative which would request a report on the Red Line project. And for the capital program, the recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance. I'm going to conclude the presentation there, but will note for your reference that in the updates section, there's an additional discussion on the Central Maryland Regional Transit Plan update, MARC train service expansion reporting, as well as information on the MTA cybersecurity incident that occurred earlier this year. However, I will conclude the presentation there and I can take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much. Please join us Secretary, Administrator.
For the record, I'm Katie Thompson, Acting Secretary of Transportation. I'm joined this afternoon by Holly Arnold, Administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration. We appreciate the opportunity to be here to discuss MTA's budget. Thank you again to Sam Quist for his review of the department's budget. As we discussed on the prior panel, transit is critical for riders across Maryland, and it's vital to the economic success of this state. Every day, hundreds of thousands of Marylanders rely on MTA to access jobs, education, medical appointments, and go about everyday life. Thanks to Governor Moore's leadership, transit in Maryland is being prioritized and is positioned for success. We have the right team in place at this pivotal moment. Over the past year, MTA has had many accomplishments, and I'd like to highlight just a few. On my very first day as acting secretary, I was excited to participate in the unveiling of MTA's new Metro rail cars assembled at a manufacturing facility in our own Hagerstown, Maryland. These new rail cars represent a significant investment that will create a modern, reliable, and safe Metro experience that residents and employers can rely upon. Significant progress also continues on the Purple Line, which is now more than 87% complete. All 28 light rail vehicles have arrived at the operations maintenance facility in Glen Ridge, and we are working aggressively to deliver on operational service soon. This is a major milestone for the Purple Line. It's a vital connection that is long overdue, that will knit communities, ease congestion, promote public transit, and link riders to 21 stations and key destinations across the corridor. These are two major projects. They're part of many efforts designed to transform transit in Maryland. MTA has been working on a lot this past year, and I can assure you there is much more to come, and we will be working hard to deliver for Maryland. The future of transit in Maryland is bright. Now I'll turn it over to Administrator Arnold, who will provide additional information and address the DLS analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Good afternoon, Chair Roosevelt, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Holly Arnold. I'm the administrator at the Maryland Transit Administration, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the MTA. I want to thank Sam for his work. It's always great working with him throughout the year and his very thorough analysis. We really appreciate working with him. I'd also like to thank the General Assembly and the Moore-Miller administration for the funding in last year's budget. Because of that additional funding, we've been able to advance a number of important capital investments across the system. We're thrilled about the launch of MTA's Light Rail Modernization Program, a fully funded $1.4 billion investment in our light rail vehicles, signal systems, stations, track, and maintenance facilities. This is the first major investment since the light rail was built in the early 90s. It's going to allow for faster, safer, and more accessible service. We are now in market for the majority of the program, and we've seen a ton of interest within the industry. We're also prioritizing public safety and have been investing in making sure our riders and our employees are safe. We implemented a rider code of conduct and our rider exclusion policy thanks to the bill passed in the General Assembly last session. We also launched our CSAY app, which allows riders to discreetly report safety concerns in real time to MTA police. In 2025, there were no major crimes, homicides, or rapes reported on the MTA system, and serious crimes are down 50% over the past decade. We're also positioning the state for future transit success, and we outlined that in our Be More Bus and the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan. These greater levels of service that could be possible through additional future resources. The first year of the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan, we've seen momentum on several key near-term initiatives, including improvements at Martin State Airport, the Martin's Maintenance Yard, and completion of a feasibility study for a third track along the Brunswick Line. As the Secretary said, the Purple Line continues to make significant progress, and we've been happy to see increased business engagement along the corridor, including MDOT's Small Business Grant Program, which last year awarded $2 million in grants to nearly 200 small businesses most directly impacted by construction. In addition to planning and projects on the ground, MTA has been highly focused on improving our budget performance, both on the operating and capital side. We closed FY25, our operating budget, within 0.2% of our spending plan, and we closed our capital budget at 97% of the final CTP. Spending on our state of good repair and enhancement increased by 24% year over year and has grown each year since FY21. Investment in MTA has significant impacts across the state, and 80% of our budget is spent here in Maryland. Our new Metro rail cars are being assembled in Hagerstown, and the components are shipped in through the Port of Baltimore, having that multimodal impact there. Meanwhile, other MTA supplies are being sourced from across the state. Our brake pads are made in Westminster. Our bus lifts are purchased from Stevensville. At MTA, we're focused on ensuring that transit in Maryland is a good investment and that the future of transit throughout our state is well positioned to succeed. I want to thank the entire MTA team for their outstanding work. It does truly matter. Turning to the DLS analysis, there were 3 things we were asked to speak on. First was provide an update on the status of grant agreements and funding distribution for the Maryland Senior Rides program. All of our FY26 Senior Ride grant agreements have been signed by MTA and distributed to the recipients for their final execution. It does vary among the recipients, and our team is working closely with them to get those executed so that they can submit eligible expenses for reimbursement. We were also asked to comment on the planned uses of capital funding for the Red Line in FY27. The Red Line FY27 budget focuses on kind of answering some of the key questions about the project scope to identify the concept design, or what's known as the preferred alternative, that will advance through the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grant Program. This includes planning, preliminary engineering, traffic analysis, field investigations, community engagement, and administrative support for the program. This really will position the Red Line for future capital investment grant funding eligibility and making sure that we're ready for future engineering and construction. As you mentioned, the NEPA pause, it is administrative in nature and it hasn't affected the ongoing technical work to determine the preferred alternative. We really kind of worked with FTA for this pause to make sure that we're able to enable a thorough assessment of the current scoping questions and then establish a NEPA timeline that incorporates that work. We do concur with providing a report outlining the details of the Red Line and the project's timeline, next steps, and projected funding needs and sources. We also concur with providing the ongoing Purple Line reports. We do find those are helpful for us and for the public and elected officials to see the progress on the project. On the operating budget recommended actions, we do respectfully disagree with the proposal to delete the funding for the 5 new apprenticeship programs. And I've actually asked Anita Bush, one of our apprentices currently in the program, here today to speak for a few minutes on the importance of the program to her and also to ask any questions. So I'm going to give her my seat for a minute if you have any questions for her for the program, and then I'll come back up.
Good afternoon. No, it's good. Hello, everyone. No questions, or I just begin?
Do you want to give your remarks?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Hedelman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Anita Bush, and I'm currently employed by MTA as the apprentice in the MTA bus maintenance program. I speak not only as a supporter of the apprenticeship program, but as its first female class member scheduled to graduate April 2027. I am here today to testify in strong support of Maryland Transit Administration Bus Mechanic Apprentice Program and urge you to continue maintaining the wise investment you are making to address this critical shortage of skilled bus mechanics in the state. I appreciate your time and commitment to ensuring the Baltimore region's transportation systems remain safe, accessible, and reliable for all its riders. Continued funding of this program will nurture the next generation of bus mechanics to maintain and modernize the Baltimore region's public transit fleet. You should know that the apprenticeship is far more than a workforce initiative. It is a public safe measure. It's an economic development strategy, and perhaps most importantly, it's a long-term investment in Maryland's growth and resilience. I entered this program in November 2024, well acquainted with the MTA and all that it offered. I had been an MTA bus operator since April of 2022. While I found bus operating to be enjoyable, I wanted more personal growth in my professional life. I wanted a change. I saw posting for the apprenticeship program, and it matched perfectly with what I saw for myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many people are in the program with you?
10.
10.
9.
Okay.
Including myself.
In total?
In total, 10, including myself.
Okay. Yep. All right. And this is not for you, I guess, for Holly. So this was going to expand it from 10 to 15?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Senator Rosenfeld?
Well, thank you very much for what you're doing, and thank you for coming here and telling us about it.
You're welcome.
It's very exciting. I was going to ask you, but you answered the question. What were you doing before? So you were working for MTA.
Yes, I was an operator.
in a different role. So that's really that's great. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the administrator some questions.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Anita is one of the stars of the program, and I think the only one who came from within MTA. Everyone else was an external hire, but we were thrilled that she wanted to take that opportunity, and I know the maintenance team is excited to have her graduate and cut her loose.
So I want to get a little more understanding of the program. So you have how many, right now, you have how many apprentices in what?
So we have it's a 3-year apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
So we have 10 apprentices in the first kind of group of that. So they're in year 2 right now. And they're scheduled to graduate in 2027. So what we're asking for in the budget is for 5 additional pins so that we can start another group in that year 1, so that essentially every other year we will have graduates coming out of the program.
And are they all in bus maintenance?
Right now they're all in bus maintenance. We would love to expand it. It's been very successful, and across the agency, people are raising their hands saying they want apprentices.
So what have been the problems?
I mean, it's really been, I say, pretty smooth sailing. We did a lot of work and planning leading up to this. We're partnering with Baltimore County Community College for the
instruction.
Some of the instruction in the classrooms, and we had a ton of partnership. I know they're in the room. I'll give ATU credit for working with us to set it up in advance.
So it's a joint program with ATU.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yep. So the mentors are ATU, so they get paid for doing that, and so it's been really successful. We had some bumps to start with, expectations and getting all that set, but I think we're in a much better place now. That's one of the reasons we wanted to wait for the 2-year mark to start the next program, to make sure that we felt really comfortable and confident that we could deliver this.
Well, this goes to the issue of the analyst's recommendation on saying, don't get extra pins, repurpose existing pins. And I've heard this across state government and from the unions, and I don't really understand it. If an agency has material vacancies, substantively, that's why you need to recruit more people and have apprentices to fill vacancies, so you have skilled people. So substantively, it's a solution to that problem. But if you have vacancies, why can't you use the vacancies pins for the apprentices?
So on the bus maintenance side, our actual vacancies are fairly low, and so what we would have to do is take away existing bus maintenance pins and put them into the apprentice pins. The apprentices are doing real good work, but they're not fully let loose in the same way that our actual mechanics are, and so it would ultimately end up lowering the number of actual mechanics that we have available to do the work.
That's what I'm not following.
We need the pipeline there.
I apologize for being thick here. I'm not following the math, and maybe the analyst could jump in here too. I don't understand, if you have vacancies and you fill the vacancy with an apprentice, why is that a problem?
The apprentice can't do the same level of work that a repairman can, and so we're looking to make sure that we're hiring at that highest level. And again, we do not actually have, our vacancy rate on bus maintenance is pretty low. It's an area we've been able to be successful recruiting on. We're building the pipeline, and we're excited to build that pipeline. Some of the other areas where we are seeing, again, it's a shell game. We're just moving pins from one area to another, and all the pin positions that we have are needed. And so if we take positions from finance or planning or something like that and move them over, then we're not paying invoices. We're not able to do some of the things that we need to do in that area.
Okay. I'd like to talk to you about that offline, because strategically, if we're going to get to the scale we need of apprenticeships in state government, we got to deal with this pin issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Stelling.
Thank you. Just to follow up a little bit, I've learned many times over in the union about OJT. And one of the best things is that you have probably qualified people on a job training to do exactly what is needed. So you have somewhat qualified people, but you want qualified people to do the job.
Yes.
So I think that's an opportunity for the person to have OJT and move right into that position and fill that position. I think it's something that needs to be looked into. It's a benefit for you to have that person already there and have that qualification, at least a certification of what they're doing, and move forward to even have more experience. And the more experience they have underneath their belt, the more value they are to you.
Yes.
And so I think it's a benefit for those that are doing the training. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the more we can get that have the opportunity to fill in all those pins. So saying that, one thing I just wanted to talk about, and I hope you're working with Trade Point Atlantic to expand the MTA. We're happy with what's going on and how much they have done, but I saw nothing there of talking about that. I have worked with Trade Point Atlantic because we had an existing line already when it was Bethlehem Steel.
Yes.
And knowing that we already had something existing, and then we shut everything down, and we lost all that, but they had something there in place. So they're constantly expanding, 14,000 employees.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we can go, and within my district is wonderful, I'm happy. But we can go beyond the west side, beyond the east side, beyond the south side. So we can, there is coming much better jobs.
Yes.
And we see these opportunities. We want every person that's around that area to have those opportunities. And if we can expand the MTA and continue to work with the people there at Trade Point and the Port of Baltimore. They're always doing pit training and having people have an opportunity there as well. I think when we continue to expand our areas and giving them more opportunity, the families that work there are a very big benefit of economic growth. And they can get a great job. They can buy a vehicle. They can buy a home. They can pay taxes. And so that's a benefit for all of us. And if we can continue looking at that, that would make me happy. And then one more thing, I want to thank all the workers or the hard workers that now we're way ahead of schedule for the Howard Bridge or the Howard Tunnel that is. That's a great benefit for all of us. It's going to bring more jobs and more opportunity. So it's a thing that we've been talking about for the longest time. But it's a great thing that we're looking forward to see the more the port and Trade Point Atlantic to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, and on Trade Point Atlantic, we have a fantastic partnership with them. I think our team is on the phone with Trade Point almost daily. At this point, it feels like we're part of the team. We have expanded, we added the 163 Express Bus route a couple years ago that provides the more direct service from West Baltimore over to Trade Point. It goes along under the Harbor Tunnel, which really speeds up the travel time there. We also have the 63. We're constantly working with them to understand their shift times and where people are traveling to and from. I also want to give Trade Point a ton of credit. They've built us several bus shelters and layovers, and they are committed to making sure that those options are there, and we're happy to continue working with them. We're also working with Baltimore County on the East Side Access Study in particular.
Yes.
Yep. And so I think there's the one need that we all need to continue to work through to figure out is Essex to Dundalk. Right now you have to come into town and then go back out, and it's an hour-and-a-half journey. It's not easy, and making that direct connection I think is really important. So we do see that as a need, and one that we're taking a look at as part of our annual service plan, as well as our regional bus to see what options we may have.
We have great things going on there. Let's continue. Thank you.
Yes, 100%. I did a ride along with our team, and lots of employees heading out there.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to follow up on that line of questioning because we did, I know, have a colleague and the chair who reached out about a specific bus route in District 8 because of the number of employees at Trade Point Atlantic, in particular in that district. So feel I've got to put a plug in for my Baltimore County delegation on that. I mean, it is amazing. When we've been here, this is our 12th year. When we first came in, it was a pile of dirt.
Yes.
So it really, the transformation has been enormous. And what's happening too with the dock there too is very exciting. I do want to follow up on the question about the apprenticeships. So I totally understand what you're saying if you're moving pins, but at the end of this 3-year apprenticeships, are then folks ready to actually be hired to do maintenance?
Yes.
So, I mean, potentially you're filling, you're using that vacancy as a job training opportunity to then use the pin, right?
Yes.
I mean, to fill the pin.
To fill the pin. But again, right. I think, they're not ready to be filling the pin until a year from now.
Right.
Right. I mean, so essentially that's kind of, we wouldn't have the number of mechanics that we need to continue to delivering, service or, making sure we're delivering the amount of service that we need. So that's the concern that we have with kind of reusing the existing pins.
Okay. And what is the next area that you want to move into after bus maintenance?
We like to see on our rail maintenance side. We've definitely seen a lot of retirements over there, a lot of knowledge walking out the door, and so before it fully does, we'd like to make sure we're being able to train people up to understand how to use the systems and repair the vehicles.
Okay. One final question with regard to the study this summer, and I'm blanking on the name of the bill from last year. On the regional.
The work group study?
The work group study,
yes.
yeah. Just wanted to give you the opportunity if you had any thoughts about what the recommendations were at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very collaborative process working with the work group, and I appreciate Sam again helping us with that. Sam gets to do all the MTA stuff. I think the work group really got to the point to understand all the complexities of the system, all the complexities of how MTA has been established, and I think that's reflected in the report. I'm excited to see some of the things in there in terms of the procurement reform, liability. I've been before this body for some of those items before, as well as taking a look at competitive salaries to make sure that we can get the right people in the right positions. I think it's going to continue to be a complex process because anytime you're changing an organization and introducing those new entities, but we're committed to working with the General Assembly to make it work.
Next steps. Okay. All right, Senator Rosapep.
I'd like to pursue the apprenticeship PIN thing offline, and I won't pursue it now. But I want to go to page 7 of the analysis with this chart about ridership. And I must say, there's so many colors that I'm having a little trouble following where the P is. But my big takeaway is that it seems as though, unlike Metro ridership, which we just heard, has bounced back, a little different mix, but it's bounced back, it looks like everybody else hasn't. So could you give us a little flavor of why have the folks who haven't bounced back not bounced back?
Yeah, I mean, so our ridership, so I think the one that did bounce back is actually our paratransit service is above where we were pre-pandemic. The rest of the modes vary.
Okay.
I mean, as was mentioned previously, there have been changing travel patterns. We're also still seeing the hybrid work while there is the federal return to work mandate, and we're seeing higher MARC and commuter bus ridership in particular. Like those have really driven up. There's still, MARC and commuter bus Mondays and Fridays, a lot of folks who are working remotely, working from home. And, when you look at kind of recovery, if people aren't riding 2 days a week, that is a significant kind of reduction in where you're looking at for ridership. We've been working to make adjustments as best we can because we are seeing the changes in travel patterns. MARC weekend ridership, as Randy mentioned, is high. It's at some points at pre-pandemic levels. We're seeing the same thing on bus, like our weekend ridership is higher. People are using it for more non-work commute trips. And so we just need to make sure that we're able to provide those services.
And what about, again, I can't follow the colors that well, but light rail, that's orange?
Light rail is orange, and I actually think I might have a percentage in my.
And it's not back.
No, our light rail ridership is about 81% of pre-COVID levels. We continue to see huge demand for events, and so we're seeing lots of riders there. I will also acknowledge, light rail has had a lot of issues. We had the shutdown in December of 2023, and I think during that time we may have lost some riders who chose not to come back. This past summer, we had, I think it was 3 weeks that we were down in the Central Business District because of the fire on Howard Street. And riders unfortunately choose other options. So we're doing everything that we possibly can to ensure the safety, reliability of the system because we need people to know that they can depend on it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Actually, along those lines, I do hope that as these new cars come online and as reliability improves, that there will be concomitant marketing campaign, that it's the new and improved light rail, that to let people know that it's a whole new experience.
Yes, no, absolutely. Actually, I looked at some logos this morning, so we are already planning and looking to get ahead of that. And we're looking to see with Baltimore City as well, because the Howard Street corridor, you crawl down the Howard Street corridor. Like that is something that we need to fix and see if there's some changes that we can make in the short term that don't need to wait for the project. And so we're looking to see what could be advanced there. On the Metro, we're definitely doing that advertising campaign with the new vehicles. There's a billboard over the shot tower reminding people that we have Metro, and so we'll continue continue to push that as well. I appreciate that feedback.
Thanks. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Now we have a number of folks who would like to testify on the MTA's budget. We still have two here. Lindsay Mendelson and Robin Budish. And apologies if I did not pronounce names correctly.
Thank you, Chair and Subcommittee members. My name is Lindsay Mendelson, again here from Maryland Sierra Club. We strongly urge the committee to fund the Be More Bus Plan and keep up with the state of good repair for MTA. Investing in MTA is key to cleaning up our air. Tailpipe pollution is a major contributor to the formation of ozone that is associated with asthma attacks, hospitalizations, and emergency room visits. The Baltimore region is currently designated in serious non-attainment of these federal air quality standards for ozone, and Baltimore City students have the highest rates of asthma in the state, with 1 in 3 students being diagnosed with asthma. Investing in MTA also enjoys widespread support. Our 2025 poll commissioned with Gonzalez Research showed that 94% of residents in Baltimore City and 85% of residents in the Baltimore suburbs say they support the state investing more in public transit, walking, and biking. We echo the request that the state should program the full $650 million over the next 6 years for the MTA's 5th bus division, as you'll hear from many folks today, to help implement the Be More Bus Plan. We also encourage the committee to fund more of MTA's capital needs to address the growing $2.8 billion state of good repair backlog. Last year, the General Assembly raised over $400 million in new revenue for transportation, which Sierra Club supported with the understanding that this funding would be spent wisely. Unfortunately, the I-97 expansion project was not discussed as part of this revenue package and was only originally supposed to be an intersection improvement. It has since ballooned into a $115 million project that is fully programmed in the CTP over the next 6 years, despite it being opposed by the city of Annapolis and the council member that represents most of the area that this project is in. So we encourage the committee to consider why the I-97 expansion, which doesn't have this widespread support, should jump ahead of the funding queue in the CTP over the urgently needed Be More Bus proposal when the Baltimore region hasn't seen a transit expansion since the 1990s. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Robin Budish. I am representing Transit Choices, a nonprofit transit advocacy organization. For over a decade, we have been working to create a first-rate multimodal transit system for the Baltimore region. We believe a strong regional transit system is fundamental to fostering economic growth and long-term competitiveness. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on the state's transportation budget and the FY 2026-2031 Consolidated Transportation Program. The CTP represents Maryland's largest ever transportation investment, $22.1 billion over 6 years, but it does not adequately prioritize transit in the Baltimore region. In particular, the Be More Bus Plan. The Be More Bus Plan is a comprehensive proposal to deliver faster, more frequent, and more reliable bus service. It would increase bus service by 36%. It would add over 200 buses and build a 5th bus division to maintain the expanded fleet. Yet, the current CTP provides only limited funding, meaning this transformative plan cannot be fully implemented. Public transit is more than just infrastructure. It is essential for access to jobs, schools, and healthcare. It reduces traffic congestion and emissions and ensures mobility for all residents. Underinvestment has real impacts. Students struggle to reach school, workers cannot access large parts of the job market, and employers face challenges recruiting and retaining staff. The Be More Bus Plan would address these challenges directly. Maryland has the financial capacity to implement the plan within 6 years, yet this year's CTP decreases funding for transit while highway funding grows, a pattern that has persisted for over 30 years. We urge the General Assembly to work with Governor Moore and MDOT to reallocate resources and fully fund the Be More Bus plan so that Baltimoreans can finally benefit from a modern, expanded transit system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Next up is Brian O'Malley and Paul Sturm.
Great job.
Senator Hedelman and committee members, I'm Paul Sturm. I chair the Downtown Residents Advocacy Network in Baltimore, and I manage the Better Transit Now campaign. Baltimore transit riders, bus riders in particular, are feeling a lot like Charlie Brown right now. Yes, that Charlie Brown from the iconic Peanuts cartoons, who wanted nothing more than to finally kick that football through the uprights. But as we know, every time Lucy would show him the football, planted on the field, before Charlie Brown had a chance to run up and kick it, she would take it away, leaving Charlie Brown chagrined and demoralized. Well, 8 months ago, MTA showed Baltimore transit riders, as we've heard, the Be More Bus plan. And like Charlie Brown, all of us, myself included, read that plan with great excitement and anticipation, thinking finally we would have the frequency and reliability of bus service that's been long overdue. But then, as we've heard, the 6-year CTP comes out, the governor introduces his budget, and what's there? Only a token amount of money for Be More Bus. And as we know, a plan without funding has no value. A plan without funding has no value. So let me leave you with this. As any doctor would tell you, one needs their connective tissue to be strong and healthy if your body is going to be healthy. MTA and public transportation is the Baltimore region's connective tissue. It is not strong or healthy right now. So we ask you to please do the right thing and include money in this year's budget for MTA to move forward with implementing the Be More Bus plan. Because if you do, the Baltimore region will be healthy, the state of Maryland will be healthy, and Charlie Brown will be happy again.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Brian O'Malley with the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance, and you have my written testimony. I want to highlight that in there we thank the General Assembly and the governor for the investment in MTA's state of good repair needs. As the report said, we're bringing down the backlog finally. It's long overdue. But we also ask for you to invest in Be More Bus, which you've heard several times today. I want to highlight that students are struggling to get to school. If you read the Baltimore Banner, you've seen the coverage over the last year. If you know families with kids in Baltimore City schools, you've heard the stories. I talked to a lot of the youth leaders. Several of them are going to be coming to testify at the MTA hearing on the House side. They weren't able to get away from school today, but I want to try to do my best to advocate on their behalf. The Be More Bus plan would improve the system that they rely on to get to school, and the final CTP doesn't fund its implementation in the next 6 years. Likewise, workers are struggling to get to jobs. I really appreciated Senator Solling's vision that he painted of how meaningful it would be for the region if we have more people employed at Trade Point Atlantic, and that's one of the locations where we want to connect people to jobs. But we remember that when the 163 route was added to improve connections to Trade Point Atlantic, MTA had to take service off of Eastern Avenue in order to add service there because they didn't have any capacity in their system to add new service. Their 4 bus divisions are absolutely filled to the gills, and the Be More Bus plan would create a 5th bus division, which would give them the capacity to expand service when jobs are coming online at places like Trade Point Atlantic. Right now, they do not have that capacity, and we're not funding it. So we do a report card, a transportation report card. I don't have time to explain it, but access to jobs keeps getting worse in our region, and this would help this would help improve it. And so I urge you to find a way to fund Be More Bus in this $22.1 billion program. Thank you.
Any questions? So in the analysis, it talks about the land acquisition needed to start planning for Be More Bus. Property acquisition, engineering, and environmental assessments. Is that piece, I'm sorry, I had a bill hearing, which is why I had to leave, so I missed the beginning. But is that piece in the CTP to do those things?
Yes, there's $14 million of about $650 million capital need in the plan, so it's about 2%, which is too slow. We want to proceed with much greater urgency, like the $150 million found for adding I-97 to the program, or the promise to find $200 million for a stadium for minor league soccer, or like we want that kind of urgency brought to implementing this plan.
I haven't heard that, by the way,
Yeah.
but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that the 14 million, is acknowledged. Yep.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, we have some other folks. Brian Weibel and Michael McMillan.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Michael McMillan, President for ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1300. Last year, we partnered with dozens of organizations to come together and fight for additional dedicated revenues to the Transportation Trust Fund as part of the Move Maryland Coalition. At that time, we stated publicly that we needed to do even more to have dedicated revenues to the Transportation Trust Fund. I echo the same sentiments as those before me of how the legislative session went. Hundreds of $millions came out of it. What we thought was going to go to a program for the Be More Bus to be enhanced, to be able to have more reliable service, and we just didn't see that inside of the CPT when it came out. MTA physically does not have the fleet or the storage capacity or the workforce to carry out the Be More Bus plan. This plan calls for the building of a 5th bus division at the cost of $650 million and may take years to complete. It would also require $130 million annually in expanding the workforce and $365 million in new bus purchases. MTA now estimates that it will be about 10 years to even implement this plan. Assuming that it is fully funded and approved today, but that is not the case. The current consolidated transportation currently only allocates a small portion of capital spending towards purchasing the land for a 5th bus division, but nothing for its design or construction. This means the project could be put on hold and the state seeks to find more money in the couch cushions to actually start this construction. The land may sit vacant as commuters and students struggle to get where they need to go. Practically, this means Baltimore area transit riders will need to wait another decade or more before even a possible and a faster way and a frequent way to have reliable transit here in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I was here mostly just to be able to kind of answer some of the points that were raised. I think President McMillan just addressed the main concern we have is that there is that money in the CTP, but that money is largely for the land purchase. And we're afraid that what's going to happen is in the 6-year CTP, there's no additional money for this plan to be moved forward. And what's going to happen is the land is going to be there. The land is going to be owned by MTA, but it might just sit vacant. In Baltimore, MTA riders are going to have to wait potentially as long as 6 additional years to really see that money start to get into the CTP where we can start to move forward with the real construction and getting that 5th bus division. And the reason that all of the advocates keep bringing up this 5th bus division is it's simply not possible to get the fast, frequent, and reliable service that led to WMATA's kind of comeback post-pandemic, that led to the type of transit ridership increases that other systems have seen. You're not going to be able to unlock that without this fifth bus division. There's physically not the space, there's not the fleet capacity, there's not the personnel. And so any other changes that are made, whether it's trying to expand service for Trade Point Atlantic, it's borrowing and moving, kind of moving things around. We refer to it as finding money in the couch cushions to be able to kind of put this thing forward. And that's why we understand this is a substantial investment task, but ultimately it's one that is a decade-long project. The money needs to be found so that we can eventually have the MTA system that Baltimore area residents deserve. And additionally, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't address some of the points on the apprenticeship program earlier. Obviously, ATU also supports making sure that the pins are there for the apprenticeship program. We've been very proud of this program for years and want to see it expanded. And ultimately, there's many different things that you can do with apprenticeship opportunities in transit, and this is a great one of them as well. And the final thing is, money was found for the light rail program, and that is so important. That's part of the reason why we fought so hard to find the additional expanded TTF revenues. The one thing I will flag is it doesn't move as many people as bus. Bus is the workhorse of the system.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, thank you very much. Okay, I do not have anybody else. Oh, wait, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Terrence Fitzgerald and John Larry. Thank you. I would hear about that.
You had me worried. Please. Please go right ahead.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, thanks for your time and for the opportunity to address you. I'm Dr. Terry Fitzgerald, speaking as a citizen of Baltimore City, as a transit user, and as an officer of Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility, urging you again to amend this MTA budget to provide funds to fully implement the Be More Bus Plan within the CTP, beginning with actually building the fifth bus division. As a spokesperson for CPSR, I would like to add a different dimension to this discussion. As you know, transportation is the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions in Maryland. Greenhouse gases are the driver of climate chaos, which is causing serious and dangerous adverse effects in the world, in this country, and in our state. Burning fossil fuels in our individual cars continues to make this worse. Frequent, reliable, and affordable buses in an integrated system allow us to leave the car behind, decreasing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, saving money, and improving traffic as a side effect. With regard to addressing the dangers of climate chaos, the Be More Bus Plan is just one small step, but an important one. It is part of changing our culture and changing from car-centric planning to human-centric planning, which is part of developing a world in which our grandchildren will be able to thrive instead of struggling to mitigate the effects of our failure to look the problem in the face and deal with it now. Frequent, reliable, and affordable transit is a critical part of a healthy and sustainable future. That is why we urge you to work with Governor Moore and MDOT to reallocate and commit sufficient funds to fully implement the Be More Bus Plan within the CTP. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Be More Bus. No, that's it. Just kidding, but not. Chair Hedelman, members of the subcommittee, John Lariat, Chair of the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission, BRTC. The commission was created by the General Assembly to provide oversight, accountability, and especially advocacy for MTA's Baltimore Regional Transit System and to advise the state on delivery of reliable, equitable, and modern transit for Central Maryland. I do want to salute MTA's leadership and its many excellent employees for their hard work and professionalism. It's a pleasure to work with them. But as BRTC chair, I'm obviously not here as MTA, and I'm not really an external stakeholder. In some respects, we are your agents in advising about MTA, and today that means the MTA budget. As you know, the Baltimore transit system is uniquely dependent on state capital investment. Unlike WMATA, we have no dedicated capital revenue stream. There is no doubt, and you've heard, that the transportation revenues enacted in the last session are making a big difference, and we are truly grateful. They are, as described by many during the last session, a down payment which allows MTA to continue advancing long-deferred state of good repair needs and maintain progress on major system modernization, especially light rail. But they don't allow for any enhancement or much-needed expansion. And to that end, MTA has produced ambitious but achievable transit plans, including the Regional Transit Plan Update, the Mark Growth and Transformation Plan, and the Be More Bus Plan. The Commission has approved those plans, but with a critical conclusion and caveat, not to be glib. We have the plans, we need the money. Now, I would refer you particularly to some facts. MTA capital program remains essentially flat over a 6-year period with near-term declines that could challenge fleet replacement and state of good repair. The operating budget is indeed rising, but it reflects an increasing cost of providing service, not service expansion. And like others, as you've heard, the Be More Bus Plan, which was unanimously endorsed by the BRTC, offers the highest return on investment for improving service reliability and frequency, but the CTP, of course, as you've heard, includes very limited funding. This is a pivotal opportunity, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver a reliable, equitable, and modern transit network. We need your help, we need your support, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this panel? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who I didn't call who is here to testify on the MTA budget? Okay, thank you very much. MTA is complete, and we will move on now to the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and I am going to call up Andrew Gray, our analyst on ag. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in case. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now present the Maryland Department of Agriculture's fiscal 2027 budget analysis. On page 1, you see there the budget increases $2.6 million, or 2.1%, to $124.7 million. In terms of some of the actions that have occurred in the budget, federal decisions are discussed on page 2. There are 2 components of this that actually impacts MDA. The first one is a $4.9 million reduction in local food purchase assistance, the 2025 agreement funding. So it was funding that was passed on to food banks to purchase local food from Maryland farmers. There's also rescission of $180,000 for spongy moth suppression. That funding was backfilled by $135,000 in general funds from the contingent fund, also money from the Department of Natural Resources and local governments. In terms of the proposed deficiency for fiscal 2027, there is a $500,000 in general funds deficiency, which includes shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy savings. There's also $55,000 in general funds for the turf and seed program to replace the vent hood system in the seed testing laboratory. Now, in terms of the overview of agency spending, you can see on page 3 there that about half of the agency's budget is in the Office of Resource and Conservation, about a quarter is in the Office of Marketing, Animal Industries, and Consumer Services, and then the remaining quarter is for the Office of Plant Industries and Pest Management and the Office of the Secretary. In terms of some of the larger funding sources, $23.1 million for the cover crop program, and then there's obviously salaries for the employees as well. Moving now to the proposed budget on page 5. Exhibit 2 reflects that there's about a $2.3 million increase in personnel expenses, salary adjustments, about $2.3 million for employee and retired health insurance. And then in terms of the other changes, one of the larger ones is the $2.4 million decrease in funding for the cover crop program from Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bay's 2010 Trust Fund reimbursable funds. We'll talk a little bit more about that as an issue. There's also a $1.2 million increase for the food bank funding to purchase invasive blue catfish. This is balanced by a $2 million decrease for that loss of local food purchase agreement funding in fiscal 2027. In terms of the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provisions, they're starting on page 6, the very bottom there. The first component repeals the funding mandate for the Maryland Native Plant Program. So that would reduce $150,000 from the University of Maryland Extension, and then $100,000 for Maryland Department of Agriculture to hire staff to run that program. The second provision in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act is on page 7. This is for the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland. This reduces the mandate from $1 million to $700,000, and that's from the Cigarette Restitution Fund. Then you have the Maryland Healthy Soils Program, reduces the funding that the governor is mandated to provide for that program for $500,000 to $400,000 for fiscal 27 through 2028. And finally, the Urban Agriculture Water and Power Grant Program and Fund reduces the mandate by by $100,000 in fiscal 2027 only. In terms of the personnel data on page 8, you see there's an increase of 8 positions and a decrease of 7 contractual full-time equivalents. So that's basically a balancing operation. October 2025, Board of Public Works approved the abolition in Maryland Department of Agriculture of 9 positions, of which 3 were vacant and 6 were due to the voluntary separation program. And in terms of those regular positions, they're basically contractual FTEs becoming full-time state employees. There's also a new procurement officer that will help with address some of the audit findings that are noted in an issue in this analysis. Moving now to key observations. The first one is on page 10. This is concerning the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming Programs. We discussed this a little bit as part of the Chesapeake Bay overview. So our program report was requested, restricted $100,000 in last year's budget for the purpose of finding out more about the spending plan, what are the final program parameters to justify the full $900,000 that the agency is looking for. So $500,000 was budgeted in fiscal 2026. Now they're asking for the full $900,000. So to inform that, the idea was this report would help us understand the final parameters, the spending plan, and then also just kind of understand in general how the program was going to work. MDA did support provide the report. It was not adequate to determine the spending plan and the kind of program parameters, and did note that a lot of the work that needs to be done has to be basically justified or kind of supported by a pending advisory committee that it needs to be formed. So on page 11 there at the top, the Department of Legislative Services recommends that the $100,000 restricted be released for the purposes of the report, because the report has been submitted, and DLS will prepare a letter for that purpose. DLS further recommends that the $900,000 general fund authorization or appropriation be reduced by $400,000 to level fund it between fiscal 2026 and 2027. The cover crop programs discussed on page 11. This is the second key observation. So the traditional cover crop program provides for the voluntary planting of approved plant varieties for a couple of different reasons. It's a very successful program. Usually receives around $25.5 million. There's funding from the Bay Restoration Fund and from the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays 2010 Trust Fund. However, information provided as part of the Bay Restoration Fund Advisory Committee annual report and minutes during the interim reflected that the banner cover crop year for fiscal 2025 was actually going to cause an overspend of the agency appropriation. So what it looks like is that the agency has been able to use some other funding sources, including the EPA's Chesapeake Bay Regulatory and Accountability Program funding and some Bay Restoration Fund funding in reserve in order to cover that need. And also it looks like to push some of those cover crop contracts out of fiscal 2025 into fiscal 2026 as well. So it appears that they've been able to kind of adjust to that incredible interest in the cover crop program. However, we're seeing similar levels of interest for fiscal 2026 and 2027 as well. So obviously there's going to be an ongoing concern potentially of trying to figure out exactly how to fund that program in a sustainable manner. And also of note, the $2.4 million reduction from the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays 2010 Trust Fund for this particular program. So at the time where interest is skyrocketing, funding is being reduced. On page 12, DLS recommends the MDA comment on how much was spent on fiscal 2025 or crop year 2024-2025 cover crop payments, how this compares to the initial cover crop program appropriation, the timing of the payments by fiscal year funding appropriation, and the funding sources and amounts. And DLS also recommends the MDA comment on how it anticipates funding the current year interest level, especially in regards to the fact of the reduction of funding for the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays 2010 Trust Fund. Then the third key observation concerns old audit findings. So their audit findings are noted in Appendix 2 of this analysis. 2 of the 4 are old audit findings. And when I speak of old, I'm thinking going back to, for the first one, there's the registration, product registration for the state chemist. It's going back to preceding audit reports in 2013. So this is obviously a long-standing concern. The question is, will the agency kind of resolve that permanently kind of going forward? Then the next finding number 4, concerns the equipment inventories. And this actually has been commented on back to 1990. So obviously a long-standing concern that the auditors have relayed. DLS on page 13 recommends that $100,000 in MDA's operating budget be restricted until the submission of a report on the completion of the activities needed to resolve those audit findings. And that is scheduled for July 1, 2026 in terms of the restriction due date. That would allow them to use that money the rest of the year based on the fact that in theory they've kind of done all the work needs to be done to resolve those audit findings. Then on page 13, Maryland Department of Agriculture, it's noted that the electric vehicle charger registration process has been modified. So the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act last year did authorize the Maryland Department of Agriculture to set its own fees for the Weights and Measures program, which they did. They've set a fee of $150 per port for the electric vehicle chargers. And I guess there's so then the idea was that you're going to open up the registration period in October 2025, and that would run through December 31, 2025. But January 1, everyone would then, therefore, going forward, have to be registered. In the event that has been delayed to July 1, 2026, but ongoing costs reflect the need. Therefore, kind of a conversation here about how MDA is going to be able to fund some of the work that that program needs to do, including a very expensive truck, around $454,000 or so to replace in fiscal 2027, and where the money is going to be coming from for that purpose based on the delay in the registration period. DLS recommends the MDA comment on the overall plan for the rollout of the charger inspections and the registrations and when the fee increase revenues be realized in its budget. And the fifth and final issue or key observation on page 14 concerns two reports that were not submitted until very recently, the Enforcement Inspection Position Strength Report and the Maryland Poultry Registration Program Report. Now I won't go into the details of what each report says. They're noted here. They were late. DLS recommends that MDA comment on why they were submitted late. On page 17 are the two recommended actions. The first one is to reduce funding for the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming Program to level funded for fiscal 2026. That's a $400,000 general fund reduction. And then the second recommendation is the restriction of $100,000 until the submission of information about those audit reports, resolving the audit findings, excuse me. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the presentation.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much. You have Mr. Secretary. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Hedelman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Kevin Attic, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Agriculture. Happy to be here, and I know it's getting late in the day. So I will first thank Andrew Gray for your thoughtful analysis. We always learn something having someone else look through our stuff, so we appreciate that. We have submitted written responses and written testimony that provides detailed answers to a lot of the questions raised in the analysis. During this time, we'll just address a few items and certainly be available for questions. Sitting to my left is Assistant Secretary Heather Barthel, who is our Assistant Secretary of Administration. So she's available to answer any questions, and we've got each of our departmental program assistant secretaries here as well, in case we needed to get into the weeds or the pests or pesticides, et cetera. Even during these economically stressed times, the budget that you have before you continues to reflect our mission to provide leadership and support to our agricultural community, the number one commercial industry in the state of Maryland. We do understand and appreciate the challenges facing your committee this legislative session. I can assure you that the budget that you have before you from the Maryland Department of Agriculture is fiscally responsible. We've closely reviewed our programs and have used data to identify what was truly needed, and what you have before you is allowing us to provide the necessary services to the citizens of the state. A couple of high-level summary numbers. First of all, our total operating budget is $124,700,000, and the breakdown is general funds $45.5 million, special funds $40.7 million, federal funds $13.3, and reimbursable funds $25.2. Couple of highlights, as Mr. Gray mentioned, personnel and vacancies. We continue to reign as one of the agencies with the lowest vacancy rate. Our vacancy rate has remained an average of 6.5 over the last fiscal year. Our target vacancy rate for FY27 is 6.08. As was noted, we did eliminate 9 positions at the October 25 BPW as part of the administration's response, the legislative mandate to reduce 150.5 positions. 3 of these positions were vacant. 6 positions were part of the VSP program. The savings associated with the elimination of these positions will be fully realized beginning with MDA's FY27 budget. As was noted, our budget also includes 8 new PINs, for which we are very grateful. 7 of these PINs are for contractual conversions for positions that are long-term positions in forest pest management and plant protection and weed management, and staff for the Maryland Market Money Program, which was transferred over to us from the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission, and we now run in-house at MDA. And the funds did transfer from SMATIC over. The remaining PIN is a new procurement PIN that will help our existing procurement officer to meet our procurement needs. As our programs grow and as the procurement rules change, there is much faster turnaround required. With our 2 labs that we operate in Frederick and Salisbury, there is a lot of supplies that are funneling through those. When we have incidents like high-path avian influenza, all of a sudden we have a surge need for additional procurement, so that will be incredibly helpful. And that also helps to resolve one of the audit findings about our procurement process. We were asked to address a number of recommendations and others as part of the DLS analysis. As I mentioned, you have our full written response. I'm going to focus on a few key items here and then obviously answer any other questions that you may have. First of all, MDA agrees with the recommendation to release the $100,000 in restricted general funds related to our LEAF program, as we have now submitted our required JCR report. We disagree with the recommendation, I should say we respectfully disagree with the recommendation that fiscal 27 LEAF program be level funded with a $400,000 reduction. Part of the reasons is this is a new program and this is a very large program. It is not something that we can just stand up like a lot of our marketing programs. It's taking a lot of time, a lot of meetings, a lot of interactions with our sister agencies and also with conservation groups with whom we're hoping to sign our first ever MOUs at some point soon to help us with this work. We detailed the progress in both our GCR report as well as in our written response to the analysis. I will say that without these incentive funds, it will be difficult to grow the program as envisioned in FY27. This will lead to less progress on our Bay goals and overall competitiveness of our agricultural industry, particularly those farms that are going above and beyond to be good neighbors, which of course is one of the core reasons for the LEAF program is to promote the culture change toward conservation. Also under key observations, the third observation on page 12 regarding our March 2025 legislative audit. First, we respectfully disagree with the recommendation to restrict $100,000 of MDA's general operating expenditures until the submission of a report certifying that all steps needed to address our 2 repeat findings have been taken and the actual systems and processes have been implemented. And here's why. We worked very closely with the Office of Legislative Audits as that audit was underway, as findings were being developed. We discovered a lot of things that we could be doing differently in the department and have made those changes. A lot of those changes were being made while the audit was underway. Our response to the DLS audit, as well as our response to the analysis, details steps that have been taken to address those 2 repeat findings. Requiring another report and restricting funding pending the submission of the report is unnecessary given everything that is already occurring with the changes we're making. I would also like to point out our EV program, which Mr. Gray mentioned, our EV service equipment, EVSE program. We are in the process of developing that program and rolling out the registrations. We did push the registration after a series of public comment came in after our public comment period closed. And so we didn't formally open it back up, but we did hold a number of listening sessions and have held many meetings with county representative, organizational representatives, and members of the community to get their input and to figure out how we can better refine the program. We have announced a number of changes. We have narrowed the scope of which chargers based on their location, based on whether or not they are gated based on whether or not they are offering free charging versus a transactional charge. So we have limited the scope of our program. There continues to be concern about the fee and the number. It's currently set at a $150 fee. We have been working diligently with members of the General Assembly, with our sister agencies to figure out if there is a way to find additional funding to help offset this program, which is entirely special funded. We have entered into an MOU with our sister agency, the Maryland Energy Administration, where some funds from SEEF will be dedicated to the EV-SE charger program, and that will help us to purchase the standards, the equipment that we use to test EV chargers, which is unfortunately very expensive. It will help us to procure the vehicles, and it will help us to onboard new staff. We have made some other progress as well. We've, in anticipation of this, we've sent 4 inspectors and 2 supervisory staff to national training sessions to obtain the necessary certification. And we've established inspection protocols, data tracking systems to gear up. We've also procured specialized registration decals, and we have initiated procurement of the required EV-SE testing equipment. I will tell you that we continue to get lots of complaints about EV chargers. And so as someone who's driving an EV, and as I know some members of this committee also drive EVs, it is still difficult to find sometimes operating EV chargers. And so it is of our top level interest to add this program to our weights and measures program and to provide a customer service that is very much needed. When we meet with our EV charging companies, and they're concerned about the fee and concerned about the regulation, it is very easy to respond, because as someone who will spend sometimes an hour of my time driving around trying to find an EV charger that is accurate, an EV charger that is actually working even though the device says it is, and it can be difficult. And the losers here are Maryland consumers, and there does need to be a construct for regulation. So we're excited to get that started. As I mentioned, we are in discussions to find ways to lower that fee as it rolls out in July. One other point, Mr. Gray mentioned that very expensive truck, the $400,000 plus truck. It is the heaviest truck on Maryland roads because it is a moving weight. It is a driving weight. It is used to calibrate the truck scales at truck stops, and it also carries all the other weights that are then offloaded with a crane to test everything else. So it is a very expensive truck, and it is, I'm not going to say there's duct tape involved, but it is getting to the point where it definitely needs to be replaced. So we appreciate your support on that. That's a very high-level response to the analysis, and we're happy to take any questions. And last thing I'll say is we're very appreciative of the ability to work collaboratively with your committee and your peers. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Rosebud.
Yeah, sorry, I missed most of your testimony.
I can start over.
No, feel free not to. No, but I walked in on the EV stuff, and I am not a EV driver. So what is the systemic problem? Why are we having so many problems? I don't quite get it.
Well, I'll zoom out and I'll be quick, but I'll zoom out and just say that this is a really, really new industry, and it's a really, really innovative industry. And you've got players from public utilities like BGE who've installed chargers all the way up to Tesla, who has a brand to uphold, and they want to make sure it's as easy and as streamlined for their customers to get a charge. One of the challenges is it's an industry that has been up to this point unregulated. There have not been standards, there have not been regulation in most states. There are a few states that have jumped into the game. Now many, many more states are getting into the EV regulation business as well. There are national standards which we are party to through NIST, and so we and there are handbooks that outline the parameters. So it's really just about us getting the equipment, setting a fee, and getting started. But our charging inspections will be not much different than any other state.
But does that mean, because I just know none of this, that means that I can go out and set up an EV station and it'll work or won't work?
So there are certain companies, I think there are 10, maybe 12 companies that are operating in Maryland, and team can correct me on that number, but they're the Teslas and ChargePoint and Electrify America and a couple others that are out there. And they will work with, I'll name drop, they will work with a local gas station, convenience.
Yeah, for the location.
Like Royal Farms or Wawa to set up a bank of chargers.
Right.
And right now, there's all that contract and agreements, but there's no one regulating to make sure that those chargers work. There's no one to complain to if and when those chargers do not work. And unlike a fuel pump, where if it doesn't work, you walk into the gas station, you say, pump 3 doesn't work, or it shorted me, or it didn't take my credit card, there's no one to complain to right now because it's a different company that's operating those chargers. And or sometimes the chargers are in a public park. And who installed it, who's maintaining it, who's managing it. And so we're getting reports of months, if not much longer, that these.
I got it. No, I had no idea. No, thank you for taking the initiative. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
But still go buy an EV. Because I'm loving the one I'm driving. Oh, well, yes.
That is the problem.
Therein lies the issue.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Senator Sully.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the information, Secretary. I don't know how we can find the proper way, plan, whatever we need to put something in place so we can have exactly what you just said, where you would have a place where somebody can go and you can charge your vehicle. And they wouldn't have any type of information there showing that you could make an 800 number, that you can make that contact, where you can tell if you're in Baltimore County or you're in Anne Arundel County, and they'd have that contact. And they can, in time, come out and say, oh, we see the problem, we can take care of this. That's the part I don't understand. Because you said it, there's people out there putting them out there. And you got to find them. They're here, they're there, they're not. And I personally know, working with the county executive a year or so ago, they went out and said, we have locations, we're going to tell you these locations where they are. They're here by the state police, they're here by this park and ride, they're here. So they're in areas where we can tell you where they're located. But at the same time, the people that are putting them in place, why aren't they saying, or why are they doing and being active and saying, by the way, we have this information. And if we can get this information, we can call this number and we can say, but why couldn't we do something?
Well, I would say two things. The first is, sounds like a great argument for registering every one of these as they come online. So I would imagine the first year we'll be chasing around. The companies are the companies, so the 10, 12 companies will get the memo and know that there's a law and they're dealing with this in other states and they'll get back to us. There are probably some small operators that we'll have to chase down and figure out who owns and operates, and cities who may operate them as well. But going forward, as they come online, they will have to register with us. We'll know where they are. And that's great. There are really, really great free apps that exist for an EV owner to be able to click on. And your car will tell you which ones it knows about on the screen, but there are great apps which tell you which ones are out there and which brand. Because, much like you might have a gas card and like a certain brand of gas station, EV drivers like a certain brand as well. And a lot of that, as we are learning, is based on the reliability of some brands. Some brands are more reliable because those brands have built into their systems a feedback loop where if that device goes offline, I'll use Tesla as an example, Tesla is notified immediately and the device automatically shuts down so it becomes inoperable. When I've had that issue once or twice where it starts charging, something happens, and the machine knows, all right, there's a glitch, I'm shutting it down, my app no longer shows that one as available. Really, really smart. Others, it's not the case, and so it will be helpful to have our sticker on there that says, got an issue? Call the Maryland Department of Agriculture, here's the number. There are some consumers out there who I will not name drop, but there are two in particular who call us all the time. and say, this one's out, that one's out. As I mentioned, there are apps that will pay you to report which ones are out. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
May not have that number, by the way, but.
Part-time gig, no.
And I understand all that. I just think it's really important that we're ahead of it. And I know you're trying to do and get there. I just think knowing by location where they are, but knowing at the same time the contact that you can get to.
Yes.
To find out how, okay, we know this one's out. Okay, you know it's out. How long is it going to take you? Right. And who do we need to contact to make sure that we can get this replaced or repaired? So I just think it's something that I know you're going to be working on.
Yes.
So.
And luckily, we do have parallel programs. Next time you're at a gas pump, check and you'll see a sticker with the Maryland Department of Ag on it. So we're already inspecting every gas pump. Every scale and every store that's weighing your chicken salad has a little sticker on it. So we're inspecting those on a regular basis, and it's got our number on it. And we do come out and calibrate those, just like we will be coming out to make sure that the EV chargers work.
Thank you.
And I got a bill on that. Without your support. Yeah. We've been working on this for a while, and so I do applaud what the progress that the department is making. I do have a question with regard to getting the standard from MEA, because I've been hearing this. So when is that imminent, or?
I think we've actually put the purchase order out to get it going. So we signed the MOU about 2 weeks ago.
Great.
And have been in further discussions with MEA on potential ways to help lower that fee even further.
Do you think that that's going to happen before the beginning of the new fiscal year?
I do.
Okay, that's good. I have to tell you, the native plant people
Yes.
are out and about.
Yes.
And they're very upset.
Yes.
So I just need to give you that feedback that they are not happy that that is being eliminated.
Understood.
Program on the budget.
And thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? The Secretary.
You don't want to mention it on the record?
I mean, you know about the midges.
I do know about the midges. I just wanted to get that into the record.
No, we're not talking about little people. We're talking about little.
Yes,
But
midges.
I mean, midges. And the thing is that I know my delegate has got with you as well.
Yes.
And I know how important it is for us to be ahead of that and the black fly, that we have those problems. And we just don't want them to continue to concentrate, because it has been, as you know, expanding itself. And we want to make sure that, the timing, and we appreciate the state and the county working together. I just want that ongoing.
Yes.
And whatever I can do. I've sent letters to my county executive, and they're prepared, they're ready. And we do have the equipment, which is great. I mean, we had literally a person that had an airplane to literally give it to us and say, no, with no cost, we'll do this. So we benefited from this in the long run, but I appreciate the cooperation. I truly do, you know that.
I appreciate that. Midges, like other nuisance plants and insects, if there's an opportunity to manage it, we should manage it. Otherwise, we're chasing it. And Baltimore County, the midge situation where we did have a year of significant funding, and the county and the state worked great together, and the community felt it. As funding has dropped off, and as the seasons change and the environment makes it just more hospitable for midges, the population last year exploded, and we did not have the funding to manage it, nor did the county. And so we're pounding on USDA as well to find out if there's anything that we can bring down from dollars from USDA potentially to help manage it. Their response thus far has been, do they bite? No. Okay, well then it's just nuisance and we have no money for it. Yeah. And if you've been to eastern Baltimore County in the height of the season, it is really, really bad.
They are a health hazard to people with asthma, which we've talked about.
Yes.
So it is a health hazard. And just going with the nuisance problem, I know that's not enough, but I always go with the safety factor, that we go with that. And working with our federal partners, if it's a possibility. I know it's a little tough, but it's something that we can look at as well.
Well, and offline, I can tell you about some of the technological innovations that we've deployed on some of our trucks to make our equipment a little more attractive to midges as well. And it's actually yielded some positive results.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, how about we call up all three of the people who have registered to testify and just bring another chair up, please. Matt Stegman, Charlotte Davis, and Annie Richards.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Heddleman, members of the committee. My name is Annie Richards. I am your Chester River Keeper with Shore Rivers. We're a water quality organization on Maryland's Eastern Shore. Our goal is to achieve thriving waterways cherished by all communities. And funding at Maryland Department of Agriculture is key to helping Maryland achieve clean water goals on the Eastern Shore and throughout Maryland. Operating budget, speaking to people and programs. I think that Maryland and its efforts to be a leader in clean water for the Chesapeake Bay has achieved so in two different ways. Really strong environmental policies. We're definitely a leader in this sector. And incentive programs. Those both live hand in hand at Maryland Department of Agriculture. And so making sure that in these challenging fiscal times that the budget appropriations are at least consistent with fiscal year 2026. Major cuts were given to departments that have environmental funding for the Bay last year. We recognize that that was something that needed to happen across all sectors to meet the moment. And we're hoping that we can see at least level funding from 2026 to 2027 as we continue to make progress for clean water goals and annual practices like cover crops, in making sure we have enough PINs to achieve enforcement for nutrient management plans, to encourage the next generation of farmers to adopt clean and bay-friendly farming practices. These are all essential, and the operating budget will help us get there. So we respectfully request that the budget as presented is honored at least at fiscal year 26 levels, and feel free to add a bit more if you're feeling inspired.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Matt Stegman from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Everything my colleague said, I would say, me too. Agriculture really is key to health of the Chesapeake Bay because, as the Secretary noted, it's the largest industry in Maryland. It's also the largest single land use in Maryland. So what happens on our farm fields really does have a huge impact for the health of the Bay. Again, we understand the fiscal state of the state and some of the really tough decisions that the subcommittee and your colleagues in B&T will have to make. So, we ask you to look favorably on the budget as presented by the governor. If you wanted to enhance, native plants or healthy soils, again, we would be very happy to say thank you. But we think the budget as presented really allows the agency to do quite a bit for the Chesapeake Bay. We as advocates, we ask a lot of our environmental agencies, and especially Ag, which is a smaller agency that runs fairly lean. Over the course of this term, we've asked them to create a new permit program for food processing residuals. We've provided a lot of feedback on some of the practices we'd love to see incentivized in the LEAF program. Just about every time we've reached out, the agency has said, yeah, let's try to work something out on that. So we want to be here to support them and make sure that they have the resources and the personnel they need to carry out their mission. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Charlotte Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Rural Maryland Council here in support of the Governor's appropriation for the Rural Maryland Council and the Maryland Agriculture, Education, and Rural Development Assistance Fund. We are grateful to be level funded in fiscal year 2027. We believe our programs are oversubscribed, they're popular, and we believe we are making an impact. Included in the materials today are copies of our fiscal year 2025 annual report. So mainly I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have. And again, thank the governor for inclusion of our funds, and thank you for your past support.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this panel? No questions. Thank you very much. Thanks for making the trip down here. Anybody else here to testify in the Department of Agriculture? All right, I think that concludes our afternoon. Thank you very much, and thank you.